Cecil Staten will succeed him. And Steve, are you here? Stand up, please, so we can acknowledge. I guess he's not here. These short timers, I'll tell you what, hard to keep them corralled. Since we met last April, as I said, I finished the last rounds of my visits to complete the 17 campus tour of the UNC system, and I finished appropriately enough at the most recent addition to the UNC family, that is the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. While I was there, student researchers fitted me with a backpack stuffed with physics textbooks and measured the effect on my walking style, and I look forward to reporting the results of that study to you soon. But it's a thrill to see firsthand the kind of remarkable work that is happening every day across the university and this state, and I am profoundly grateful to the students, to the faculty and staff, administrators, and all who offered such hospitality and generosity. I also want to recognize and thank the team at General Administration, and especially Jonathan Kapler, for making the tour such a success. And Jonathan, if you're here, give a little wave. There you are. Of course, a $9 billion enterprise that we oversee ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, so we have been busy on the home front as well. And Junius Gonzalez and I hosted our first Chancellor's Retreat at the end of April, which gave us a chance to hear in detail about the state of each institution, our leaders' biggest opportunities and challenges, and where we collectively want to go as a university. It was energetic, intellectually rich, collegial, candid, and exactly the way you'd expect a group of very talented leaders to work together. As I've said before, our chancellors must be front and center in our work, and we plan to hold an event like this at least twice a year. Not surprisingly, I have spent a good part of the last few weeks in Raleigh meeting with state legislators and staff, learning their perspectives and concerns, and advocating for the needs of the system and its students. As you'll hear later today in the Committee on Budget and Finance, we're about halfway through the legislative budget process. Our top priority continues to be merit-based pay raises for faculty and staff, a step we all know is needed to keep and develop the top talent we need in this university. We're continuing to push for smart investments in data analytics to boost student success and to give us a better measures of accountability, as well as new efforts to turn partway home students into all the way home students and future alumni. And we'd very much like to remove the private fundraising cap, as we've discussed previously. We're also working to extend the carry forward authority we earned last year, which will allow campus leaders the flexibility to better manage their institutions and address key needs. We often talk about lessons higher education can learn from business, and the carry forward is a good example of how state policy can encourage the right kinds of strategic management and certainty. We are, as we discussed last month, working closely with House and Senate leaders to tackle the issues raised by NC GAP. Everyone at the table agrees we can and should do more to help students make responsible, informed decisions about their educational paths and options. And I'm grateful for the leadership of so many legislators who care deeply about the underlying issues. Senator Berger, Speaker Moore, Senators Apodaca, Barefoot, Robinson, and Representatives Fraley, Horn, and Haynes. We've worked alongside our partners in the community college system throughout this effort, and there's mutual agreement that the UNC needs to craft a plan that focuses on improving student outcomes. I've committed to bring such a plan before the Board of Governors and the legislature before the end of this year that will tackle these high priorities. And we're also engaging in constructive conversations surrounding Senate Bill 873 and working closely with our chancellors to identify ways we might strengthen that proposed legislation. But there is no doubt that we share the underlying goals of making college more affordable, making the cost to students and families more predictable and stable, and encouraging more students to pursue an education at UNC institutions that can and will welcome them. We continue to hear about concerns regarding House Bill 2 and its various effects across the university system. As public discussion continues, we're in the process of engaging legal counsel to represent the university in the two related lawsuits that have been filed against us, and we'll be talking more about that tomorrow. In other matters, I'd also like to take this opportunity to announce the formation of an online learning task force. As I've mentioned previously, we need to know more about what we are doing with online learning and how we can maximize the tech platforms to meet our core mission and track progress and measure success. This task force will include faculty and administrators from the university, as well as independent experts. Their work will commence in June and wrap up by the end of the calendar year. From my earliest days on the job, you've heard me talk about the need for more policy and strategy discussions during these board meetings, enabling us to use our time together and the presence of the chancellors more effectively to tackle high-level, top priority concerns. That notion was reflected in the in-depth interviews that BCG conducted with many of you in this room, and those conversations also honed in on the need for a new strategic planning process, which the full board approved last month. Based on conversations with Chairman Bissett, Governor Mitchell, and the Strategic Planning Committee, we are beginning to realign our board meetings to more clearly focus on the major priorities within that strategic planning effort, guided by our 5 key themes of access, affordability and efficiency, student success, economic impact, and last, excellent and diverse institutions. I hope you'll feel energized by this process and will come away from those meetings pleased by the depth and quality of our deliberations. We're going to move away from the just-in-time planning that has too often characterized these gatherings, working instead to telegraph topics and reading well in advance so we can all arrive prepared and ready to engage. You should have received a master calendar and a strategic planning overview as part of your packet of information for this meeting, and you'll note that it lays out discussion topics for the months ahead. We want to start handling the routine administrative and transactional business of each committee in appropriately noticed meetings to be held by conference call about 1 week before the regularly scheduled board meetings. As approved, these items would then be included on the full board's consent agenda unless they need to be handled independently. This work has already begun as P&T and Budget and Finance held pre-meetings earlier this week to work through these items. And in keeping with our goal of empowering chancellors and using system leadership more strategically, the P&T committee is now discussing 2 policy revisions that would further streamline the board approval process for salary adjustments. In addition, the board standing committees will collectively take up the work of strategic planning, with each committee focused on one of the 5 key themes. In keeping with the guidance from the Strategic Planning Committee, the committees will assess what is working well within their assigned areas of focus, where we have gaps, and how we can best move forward. Each of you brings a wealth of valuable experience to these deliberations, and we want to make sure our chancellors are playing a key leadership role as well. We'll also bring in experts from around the country to share data, best practices, and other insights to inform our discussions. Which brings us to our policy discussion this morning. Today, we are joined by Jay Puckett from BCG, whom you know, and whom we have asked to set the stage for this strategic planning process. And I want to thank Jay for going above and beyond the call of duty and the initial scope of work that they did for us. Next, we'll hear from Andrew Kelly, resident scholar and director of the Center on Higher Education Reform at the American Enterprise Institute, who will present on emerging national trends in higher education. I've known Andrew for over 10 years, and he is one of the most well-respected higher education policy experts in the country. He's worked on behalf of business organizations, national philanthropists, and in conjunction with other state systems of higher education. He's a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Dartmouth College, where he earned a degree in history in 2002. He holds a master's degree and a PhD in political science from the University of California at Berkeley, where he was a National Science Foundation Research Training Fellow and was honored as an outstanding graduate student instructor. I am thrilled to announce that as of August 15th, he will serve as Senior Vice President of Strategy and Policy here at UNC. The university is lucky to get him, and I know you will enjoy working with him. Following Andrew's presentation, we will hear from our own Dr. Jim Johnson of the Kenan Flagler Business School at UNC Chapel Hill, who will share data and insight on the future of North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, President Spellings. Jay?
Thank you, Chairman. It's nice to be back with all of you. After we concluded the report that we provided based on the interviews and the analysis that we had done in the early part of the year, I got a call from the chairman and the president asking specifically about one of the topics that I had spoken about when I was with you before and that we had mentioned in our report, and that was specifically around how the board spends its time and how the committees spend their time. And so I wanted to share with you, to start my remarks, a reminder of some of what we heard from you and from other stakeholders in the state about shifting your time to be more focused on strategic issues rather than more transactional and operational issues as a board. These are some of the summary comments that came back from the interviews that we conducted in the first quarter. Firstly, with regard to composition, many of the stakeholders that we spoke with, including many of the board members, connected the large size of the board with confusion and role clarity, a negative board dynamic, and slowness to make decisions. Now, obviously, the size of the board is not something that any of you have any control over, but you had comments about this when we interviewed you. The board meeting process is the next topic, and although 76% of you thought that the frequency of the board meetings was about right, there were a number of you that felt that the frequency was too great and inhibited your ability to focus on high-value work. 55% of the board members disagreed that you spend enough time on matters of key importance. And so as we dug into that more and more with the board members, it was clear that there was an appetite to spend more time on matters that you thought were most important, what President Spellings has described, majoring in the majors, and spending more time when you're gathered together on issues of strategy and less on issues of transaction and operation. The board members also felt that you were given too much pre-read material and too little time to digest it, and that was pretty consistent feedback that we received, and that there was a need to improve and align the agenda setting for the meetings with the priorities to focus on more strategic topics. With regard to committees and other subgroups, your feedback was basically that there are a lot of them, and there are 17 if you look at the number of standing committees, special committees, and working groups. That the number of committees also causes the agenda of some of the committees to be pretty narrow. And there was a thought that should be revisited over time and look at the committee structure to make sure that it continues to align with what you think are the most important topics. Another point that was raised is that there's important work that's done that requires other people beyond just the board to sit in on some of these committees, and specifically there was a sense that you didn't leverage the talent in the chancellors on some of these committees in the way that you should, and other experts. In terms of board education, 62% of the board members disagreed that there's adequate procedure for orienting new board members. And there was a feeling that board members don't always have the background that gives them the fullest perspective on public sector. And then lastly, with regard to boards of trustees, that the boards of trustees' roles are highly variable, institution to institution, and that it's not always clear what role the Board of Trustees plays versus the role that the Board of Governors plays. And there was some feeling from members of this board that you would like to have more indication of support for key decisions that are being put forward by the individual institutions as those come forward. So that was just a summary of what we heard from y'all and other stakeholders. And so Chairman Bissett and President Spellings then asked me to think about, on the basis of our experience and best practice, what would some suggestions look like that we would make for how you deal with some of these things. And so the first suggestion is to take it in bites, and that in the first bite that you can elevate the strategic priorities that you've identified to enable you to major in the majors. Secondly, that if you can take the transactional activities and put them offline from the primary board setting, you can free up some time to make sure you're having dialogue and debate about the things that you care the most about. Thirdly, to align the board meetings with the most important issues and the priorities. And then fourthly, to establish clarity on which committees and task forces should be overseen by the board versus by the president. As an example, the task force that President Spellings mentioned on online, that's something that she's going to oversee as a management responsibility. These are, I wouldn't say these are particularly profound. I think hopefully they make good logical sense to y'all and common sense, but it's really, how do you move to where you've all said you want to move? And so there's a second phase which you could take on once you get through aligning your agendas with your strategic priorities, and that could include, how do you think about making sure the 17 committees that you have, do they continue to make sense as the right 17 committees? Should you realign those in some way? Do you need the same number of meetings that you've had historically, or can you adjust the meeting frequency? And then other best practices, which we can share examples of best practices from other places, and that may inform other changes that y'all would consider as well. Specifically, you've already launched one element here, which is to align your 5 strategic priorities with with 5 of your standing committees, and to double hat, if you will, the remit for those committees. And this is the lineup that you've come up with on that. And you've also made the decision that when these standing committees are taking on this second hat, that you would augment the committee structure to include some chancellors and to include other higher education experts as appropriate. That's a really important move as well, and I think also responsive to the feedback that was provided that you weren't leveraging fully, and you felt you weren't leveraging fully the talent that exists at the institutions. The Strategic Planning Committee, which will still exist through this process, has a very important coordinating role, and these were identified as key areas for the Strategic Planning Committee to cover. First of all, to coordinate the calendar across the whole process, and I believe President Spellings mentioned a master calendar has already been distributed to you. Secondly, to monitor the overall work plan and progress. And then thirdly, to establish a set of templates so that when these various committees bring their reports to this body, they're consistent, they follow a common cadence, and that you can be more efficient in the way that you interface with the committees. They would also have a synthesizing role where they would look across the work of the 5 strategic priorities and provide a synthesis for this body, and then monitor progress and make appropriate interventions. There are a number of considerations as you think about these strategic priority committees that we would recommend. First, start with a clear understanding of the current state activities and performance, both at an institution level and system-wide. What do you do today well? What's the state of play? What are the priorities? How will progress be assessed and reported? It's important to have a fact base that you all share in common before you begin to move toward solutions. And so the recommendation is to spend some time in these committees making sure that you understand the lay of the land and you understand the fact base. Whether it's about access or affordability, your ability to make decisions as a board is going to be much stronger if you have a strong fact base and a common fact base upon which to base those decisions. involve the chancellors as co-owners versus, historically what is felt, I think, to them and to many as a minor stakeholder role who are consulted for input. And I mean, this is the coal face in the state is at the institutional level. And there are great practices that already exist right here in this state, as we've discussed in previous meetings. And these chancellors really understand that and can add a lot of value to it. Once the current state is assessed, consider then, what you might do differently. What are the gaps to best practice, and what should you do differently to close those gaps? If you're not satisfied with where you stand on access, if you're not satisfied with where you stand on affordability, what are the gaps and what's the plan to close those? Those are very strategic conversations. They inform policy and are the kinds of conversations that you've said you have a greater appetite to have. The recommended cadence for the strategic priority committees would be that you would prepare a fact base prior to board engagement as much as possible to build that current state, to understand what's happening at a national and North Carolina level, to articulate the gaps, to identify a set of metrics and other draft targets, and to develop some draft actions to drive progress. Because of the way that you're getting into this, and because of the way that you've set up your cadence for your meetings, everybody's not going to be at the same place in their fact-based development by the time they come and meet with this group. And so you all are going to have to temper your expectations according to, you have some meetings that are going to come up as early as July. And when you have a strategic planning committee come in July, they may not have the full fact base already completed, whereas if somebody comes in November, they may have enough time to get the full fact base pulled together by that point. When they come and engage with the board, review and discuss the fact base and have a facilitated conversation so that you can actually really dig into what's actually happening on the ground and what kind of policy recommendations and high-level resource allocation recommendations this body wants to put forward. And then post the board meeting, that input would be synthesized and then pulled together into action plans. Some of those actions may be at a system level, but a lot of them will be at an institution level. And then, once you've done an initial meeting, then there's envisioned an annual check-in process where, again, prior to the board meeting, there would be homework and pre-reads distributed. And then during the board meeting, you'd have an opportunity to engage with the strategic planning committees to understand the progress against the action plans that have been put forward, how they're moving on key metrics that you've defined that are important to you on each of those dimensions. And so this becomes, the main thing that you drive in these meetings as opposed to a sideshow. And that's the primary point of this page, is just that as you look at a calendar, you can see, that the bulk of the time would be devoted to strategic priorities, with operations and transactional items handled via an advanced phone call, a consent agenda format, and only things that have to be pulled out, for discussion in this forum would be pulled out. But largely you would spend your time when gathered together on the things that you have said matter the most to you and matter the most to moving this great institution forward. So that's what I had to share with you today. Any questions about what I've shared or any of this? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions or comments, members of the board? Thank you. Well, then we'll move ahead with Andrew Kelly. I got to spend a little time with Andrew last night. We were actually going to a meeting and I got lost, so he got me back on track, which was good. So I know he's good directionally. Also, Andrew, Margaret gave a great introduction for you. I didn't know she was going to announce that you were joining us until after your presentation. So I hope that doesn't put a little extra pressure on.
Not at all.
But thank
Not
you.
at all.
Thank you for being here this morning, and we really look forward to working with you in the months and years to come.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bissett. And it was terrific to meet you and get a tour of Raleigh and a little bit of North Carolina history from that tour. Both President Spellings and Jay have the benefit of being from Texas, so you'll have to forgive me my Yankee accent. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I'll try to sprinkle a few y'alls in there every once in a while, as folks have told me. It's an honor to be here with you all, and I am beyond excited to join President Spellings and her team later this summer, and to partner with you all in the exciting work that is ahead. I'm beyond excited because I think North Carolina has a chance to go from being one of the top public university systems in the country to the best public university system in the country. And not just the best in the way we traditionally define the best, the most elite flagship universities, maybe the best sports teams, but the best system across the board, a place where a variety of students with lots of different interests can come and find an affordable option, work hard, and earn a credential with labor market value that expands their labor market opportunity. And to do all that, of course, while continuing the tradition of excellence in research and innovation. North Carolina can and should be a system that the rest of the country learns from, in my opinion. And there's ample opportunity to lead on this front. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that. Families are anxious about the cost of college, and they're desperate for some bold thinking on how to make college more valuable, not just more affordable, more valuable. And policymakers are looking for solutions. And I'm looking forward to working with you all to come up with some of those. Before we can solve problems, though, we have to define the problems we face clearly. And that's where I wanted to start today's talk, with an attempt to clarify the problems that we face as a nation in higher education, and to talk a little bit about the context in which we're operating. And then shift into some lessons about what we've learned about how to do better in higher education, particularly with respect to student success. You'll notice I'm only talking about North Carolina for a section in the middle. I wanted to talk from a national vantage point, my current vantage point. I'll talk a bit about where North Carolina falls in that spectrum in the opening slides, but most of this is sort of from my perspective on the 10th floor of a DC office building, which you can see a lot from there, it turns out. So the context, these are going to be trends that are familiar to most of you, but I want to just walk quickly through them. So we're just coming out of what was a big boom in enrollment. Higher ed enrollments tend to be counter-cyclical. When the economy goes down, people get pushed back into higher education. So you can see that this is fall undergrad enrollment in degree-granting institutions. You can see it really dramatically at the 2-year level. There's sort of a big bubble, comes back down as the economy improves. 4-year level as well, now it's leveled off. Important thing to keep in mind about this trend, particularly at 2-year level, is that a lot of the students that came into higher education were in higher education for the first time. They were non-traditional students, they were adults, they tended to be lower income. That explains a lot about the trends we're seeing in terms of loan repayment issues and so on. What happens when enrollments go up? Well, if state funding doesn't keep pace with those enrollments, even if state funding stays about the same, or even if it increases slower than enrollments increase, state spending per student is going to fall, and that's what we've seen across the board. Only a few states have increased it, mainly states with energy booms, so places like North Dakota and Alaska. Just to simplify here, the United States average on this measure was down 24% over the past 14 years, between 2000 and 2014. This is inflation adjusted. And then North Carolina had it a little better than the rest of the country, a little better than the average, down 20%. But certainly funding per student came down. What happens when funding per student comes down? Well, institutions typically say, well, we don't have any choice but to make up that revenue by raising tuition. And that's what you've seen. The picture is not pretty for public 4-year colleges. Every state, Ohio, I think, reduced its tuition by about 0.5 percentage point over that period. So otherwise, if you lived in any other state, you're facing a much higher sticker price than you were before. Not necessarily net price. Net prices rose more slowly because of grants and aid. North Carolina here was a bit above the national average in terms of the increase in 4-year tuition prices. These are all adjusted for inflation, as you can see on the slide, and it's in-state tuition. These are for 4-year colleges. So North Carolina, had a little bit worse than the rest of the country. It's important to remember, though, that even though the growth has been really high, North Carolina is still 41st on a list of 50 states in terms of how high its tuition is. It's toward the bottom. It has very inexpensive tuition, and I'll show that in a little bit. So now we all know what's happened. When tuition prices rise and family incomes have stayed basically stagnant, they haven't grown, and in many cases they've declined, you see a big boom in student debt, right? This is the number we all keep hearing about, 1.2 trillion. It keeps going up. These are data from the New York Fed. These are not adjusted for inflation. But this is a remarkable increase in any kind of social phenomenon. As a social scientist, I can say that with some confidence. We've also seen a growth in student debt per capita. The blue line's North Carolina. These are also data from the New York Fed. Again, slightly below the United States, which you'd expect given lower tuition prices on the whole, but it's climbing. It's going in an upward direction pretty clearly. Well, as I said, when enrollments boomed, a lot of those folks were people who were non-traditional students, adult students working full-time often or working part-time. So what we saw was completion rates have actually come down. And completion rates sort of dipped, especially for the group that was in the teeth of the recession that came back into higher education, and the dropout rate has grown. So you're producing more degrees nationally because you have a much larger enrollments, but the productivity's gone down, right? We're spending a bunch on students that aren't completing. These are from the National Student Clearinghouse. So what's the result of this? Well, we have repayment problems for people that have taken on all that debt. They've struggled to repay their loans. So this is from a paper that the Brookings Institution released last year, and it took student loan record data from the Department of Education and merged it up with data from the IRS. So you could actually follow students in the labor force and see how they were doing in paying back their loans. So you can see the top is 5-year cohort default rates. So institutions currently are held accountable under a federal standard for their 3-year cohort default rates. Those are not as informative as looking over the lifetime or a longer time horizon. You can see the 5-year cohort default rates for community colleges and for-profit colleges are enormous. When I show this slide to folks who work in finance, they cannot believe that could be true. Selective 4-year colleges, not so bad. Those are students who were typically going to college before the recession, and they're still going today. The 2-year negative amortization rate is what percentage of your borrowers owe more 2 years after they entered repayment than when they started. Your balance is going in the wrong direction. And you can see, again, even at selective 4-year colleges, that has gone up from about a quarter to 36%. It is enormous, again, in the less selective institutions. And I should say, these are not counting just graduates. These are all students. These are all students that entered repayment. So what do we have? The combination of these contextual factors, this is a defining middle class issue now. College affordability and college value is a defining middle class issue. This is one of my favorite polling items on this. It's from the Heartland Monitor poll in 2013. It was specifically focused on middle class issues. And they asked, which of the following do you believe would do the most to improve the economic situation of middle class Americans today? Higher education was the plurality, 38%, almost 40%. Healthcare came in distant second. Things like retirement and housing were sort of, didn't even come close to touching it. So we've got some troubling trends. We've got voters that are upset about it, and the question is, how do policymakers respond? And coming from Washington, policymakers in Washington don't always respond as effectively to urgent matters as they should. And what I mean by that is problem definition in policymaking is almost the whole ballgame, right? You have to have a clearly defined problem before you can solve it. And what we've seen in Washington, I think, are two narratives that have surrounded student debt, one of which is much louder than the other. And the first narrative is essentially that the growth in aggregate debt, so it's that $1.2 trillion number, and in balances and in individual level balances, are the problems to be solved. And the way we solve those problems are we propose free college, right? We just mechanically lower the price of tuition by flooding the system with subsidies. Loan refinancing, we allow all borrowers to refinance at lower rates. Even though that provides the biggest benefit to the borrowers who have the biggest debt, who are graduate students, right, who are not the ones we should be particularly concerned about, and who probably are having no trouble paying back their loans. Or loan forgiveness, right? We have an income-based repayment program that has generous loan forgiveness, particularly if you go into the public sector. Now, to be clear, these solutions are focused on cost shifting, right? They're shifting the cost from students and families back to taxpayers. And there's a reasonable discussion and debate to be had about what the right balance is between public and private. But be clear that this is not designed to change many of the incentives that institutions or students and families face. So that brings me to the second narrative, which is the one that I have been writing about and my colleagues, which is an alternative view is that student debt struggles reflect low rates of student success and high costs. And I mean high costs, not just high price of tuition, but also the high cost of educating students. And in many cases, inflated cost structures, right? Lots of growth in administration and amenities and so on. So the solutions there are very different, right? It's not a simple problem to solve. We can't just mechanically lower tuition with more money. We've got to figure out how to improve academic preparation. You're not going to get very far if your K-12 system is feeding students who are not college ready into the system. We've got to inform consumers about their options. We have to give them better information up front about what things cost and what the likely outcome of those things are. And we have to create incentives for institutional improvement and cost containment. And so quickly, I'll just give you the case for the alternative very quickly, and then we'll segue into discussion of some lessons. So college completion is the primary predictor of student loan default, and I bet maybe people in this room do know this, but this always seems to be shocking to people, that default rates are highest among people with the lowest balances, lowest loan balances. Let that sink in for a second, right? So default rates, so these folks over here, they have a balance between $1,000 and $5,000, a loan balance. They default at a rate of almost 35%. Folks with 100 grand plus, which are only 3% of that sample, default at a much lower rate. Why? Because they have more education. They went to graduate school. They don't default on their loans. People on this end didn't complete, most of them. Most of them are one and done or 2 semesters and done. They've taken out loans for living expenses. The risk of investing in this system has grown tremendously. And again, only 3 to 4% of borrowers have a balance of 100,000 or higher. So every time you read that cover story in the newspaper about the grad with 100K, remember they are not representative of the average student. So what happens, small balances cause big problems. So this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They looked at the mean balance, the mean loan balance by category of borrower. So if the borrower is still in school, if they're in a grace period, if they've entered repayment, deferment, or forbearance, the average loan balance in default is only $14,500 in the direct loan programs, even lower in the FFEL program. That's older. That's not a big balance. That's a small balance by most standards. The group of borrowers with debt and no degree is growing. This is from some work that I did looking at the BPS. It's almost half of all borrowers now are not completing. So they're taking on debt, they're not getting much, if anything, of value in return for that debt, and they're having trouble paying it off. And in some cases, frankly, people are also sort of making decisions about their finances to say, the consequences of not paying back my federal loans don't kick in for years, whereas if I don't pay my phone bill, they turn my phone off. Or if I don't pay my car payment, they come and repossess my car. So there is some decision making there that's going on among some borrowers. So one of the mistakes we make on this question about debt and whether debt's this enormous burden is we compare stocks of debt to flows of income. So we often say, oh, you have $50,000 in debt, but your salary is only $50,000 a year. How are you ever going to pay that off, right? But we should compare flows and flows, right? And so once you do that, once you actually break it down into monthly payments, right, you find the outstanding balances have gone up tremendously. So that's something we should all be concerned about. I don't disagree with that. But the average payment's only grown 50%, right? 50% of borrowers have monthly payments of $200 or less, essentially. And then another 25 are between $200 and $400. So the pay bump that you get from going to college and in this case going, because they also compare, this is just some college. The bump in earnings that you get outweighs the debt service payment. Obviously, that comes to a tipping point, which we have to be concerned about. But we're not there yet. And again, thinking about the payoff to some credit and no degree, and how that affects your ability to repay. So this is the last one I'll share on this topic, and this is student debt and home ownership. So another one we've heard is that student debt is crushing the economy, right? Because students aren't buying homes; they're not able to buy homes. Sue Donarski, who's at University of Michigan, did a terrific piece. I recommend everybody read it for Brookings. She used some data from another study. Essentially, what happened was that when folks were comparing people with student debt to people with no student debt, the people in the no student debt group included both college graduates and people who'd never gone to college at all. And so once you actually parse out people who went to college with debt and people who went to college with no debt, you see that there is some gap. So the bottom axis is age. You see that there is a gap between folks, especially here. If you don't go to college, you actually are more likely to buy a home at a young age because you're not in college. You actually have some income. But as you go up, and there is a gap between people who have no debt and people who have debt. As you go further in age, that gap is erased, right? So the notion, Donarski concludes that the real gap between the haves and the have-nots and home ownership is a college education. It's not student debt, right? So it's important we keep these things in mind. So again, two student debt stories to revisit this. Debt balances and tuition prices are the problem to be solved is what I call the red herring. I put the red herring in scare quotes because I don't think that those things are unimportant. But I think if we focus all of our attention on those things, we won't actually solve the bigger problems that we have in the system. Again, it's cost shifting. Most of the solutions around this side of the argument are cost shifting. Leave the incentives and the cost structures untouched. The real problem, in my opinion, is low rates of student success and inflated costs equals low value programs. You enroll in something and there isn't enough of a return. So we need to create incentives for institutional improvement, for cost containment, and for informed choices on the part of students and families. Note that the real problem focuses on improving value and not just lowering prices, right? Lowering prices is actually, it's not easy politically, but it's easy technically, right? We just provide more subsidy. But we've seen that hasn't actually solved the problems. So the good news, this is my segue into North Carolina for a brief period. UNC is already a leader on many of these fronts, right? It's a leader in four-year completion among public four-year colleges. I compare North Carolina, and I had to pick a color here. There's no institutional loyalty. You have so many colleges, I couldn't pick a color. I should have picked black, I guess, but I used black for the United States as a whole. So it's not an NC State or a Western Carolina backing. So they're ahead of the curve. University of North Carolina is ahead of the curve on completion, particularly compared to the rest of the South, but also compared to the nation as a whole. This is the 6-year completion rate. It's the first-time full-time definition, which of course nobody likes, but it's the best thing we have to compare colleges. It's a leader on funding per student. I know that the story around here is the story like it's been in most states, which is we've been cut to the bone, and we can't sustain any more cuts. When you look at North Carolina in comparative perspective, it looks actually really good and really healthy. And I know that big bubble and then the decline feels differently at the campuses. So I'm acknowledging that. But you compare North Carolina to the rest of the South and to the United States as a whole, which is the $7,000 mark down there. North Carolina stands out as a leader on this front. And these are adjusted for inflation. In-state tuition and fees, again, as I said, stands out as a leader, low tuition. But attainment's just average here, educational attainment, right? So North Carolina, again, is in the red. This is bachelor's degree attainment. I focus on bachelor's degrees because we're talking about the four-year system here. So North Carolina is down here below the U.S. average. You can see the big dogs, New York and Massachusetts. Maryland's also up there. I didn't include them. Florida, North Carolina has gone in the right direction and has surpassed Florida in its educational attainment. But again, it's just average, just below average. The ranking is somewhere around 25 to 30 in the country. This is based on the American Community Survey data, the most recent. Cost per degree is above average. So I did a project for the Chamber of Commerce under President Smelling's leadership, and we looked at cost per degree. These are updated numbers from that project. This is from the Delta Cost Project. This is simply just dividing the education and related expenses, which is a category that the Delta Cost Project has come up with to measure educational spending on instruction and instruction-related activities. So you can see the cost per degree is trending in the right direction. The ranking's trending in the right direction, but it's still above average. This is a measure of productivity as opposed to just spending, right? The state is spending a lot and doing well on completion rates, but maybe not as well on productivity as we might hope and as taxpayers might hope. This is a and the thing I want to finish up this sort of summary of North Carolina with is to think about economic mobility, upward mobility, which is the issue that got me interested in studying higher education in the first place, and where I've spent a lot of my time. This is a map from Raj Chetty and co-authors up at Harvard. They looked at the geography of mobility. They essentially asked if you were born to parents in the bottom half of the income distribution, what's your average percentile rank as an adult once you grow up? And they actually linked, using tax records, they were able to link parents to students based on which dependents were claimed. First of its kind study. I recommend you go poke around on the website. It's terrific. You can see North Carolina, the South as a whole does particularly poorly. North Carolina has low rates of upward mobility based on their analysis. In particular, of the 50 largest commuting zones, what they call, which is a sort of a nest of counties around the biggest cities, Raleigh and Charlotte have among the lowest economic upward mobility, as they define it, in the country. So the column all the way to the right is the one that's most intuitive. This says the probability that your child reaches the 5th income quintile, the top quintile, if your parent was in the 1st income quintile. And in Charlotte, in Raleigh, it's 5% even, and in Charlotte, it's even lower. Well, why does this matter to higher education? Because higher education is a big mobility enhancer. It is a lever to enhance upward mobility and economic mobility. And if you're a believer in earned success, that people should have the right to earn their success if they work hard and they do the right things, you have to be concerned about this. This is from the Pew, a study that Pew did on pursuing the American dream. It uses the panel study of in-kind dynamics to link parents and children. And it says, if you're born in the bottom income quintile, what are your chances of rising? What are your chances of winding up in the income quintiles on the x-axis here? And it disaggregates by whether you got a bachelor's degree or not. If you're born in the bottom income quintile and you got a bachelor's degree, you have a 10% chance of winding up in the bottom. You have essentially a 50% chance if you don't get one. Right? Again, not to say that that a bachelor's degree is the right fit for everyone. We need lots of options and lots of opportunities, but this is always, to me, such a stark comparison. It's not a miracle worker, right? You wind up in the 2nd quintile. That's where the plurality of those folks wind up. But you do have a lot of movement if you get more education. That's not surprising. So let's segue to some lessons. How do we improve some of those problems that I highlighted at the end? I don't think, they're not necessarily problems, but they're concerns. They're issues we should confront. So a couple lessons, and I'll just walk through these quickly. Institutions matter. That shouldn't surprise anybody in this room, though it is a controversial thing in higher ed often to say that institutions actually matter in terms of their outcomes. People at institutions understand that, but researchers have sort of said, it doesn't really matter that much. It's mostly inputs. It's mostly your SAT score. But we're learning that institutions do matter. Information matters. We have to tell people and help them to think about their options more clearly. Institutions can improve and expand. So the iron triangle of access, affordability, and quality, institutions can expand and improve at the same time. We've got proof points for that, and they're increasingly prominent. And incentives matter. Incentives matter in particular for students. They also matter for institutions. The question is, how can states drive reform? And that's what I'll get to toward the end. So institutions matter. This just plots the average SAT score by the 6-year graduation rate. These are from the college scorecard data that was recently released. So you see at the top of the SAT distribution, it's really tightly coupled, right? That's the inputs doing the work, essentially, right? You select the best students, they're likely to graduate. As you go down the SAT spectrum, though, right, the spread gets much wider. So what's going on here and here, right? Granted, there's probably some income differences there. There's probably some different demographic differences. But this raises the question, what are these guys doing that these guys are not doing, right? There's something going on inside that black box that we should learn about. So institutions matter. This is a study that actually looked at North Carolina in particular. They used North Carolina's amazing data to track students. You guys do have amazing longitudinal data to track students from K-12 and into the public system. And they found that low-income students, in particular, were likely to do what they call undermatching, which was to apply to and to enroll in a less selective college than they were actually eligible for, right? And eligible for meaning their academic qualifications would have allowed them to enroll in that school. they found that completion rates were 15 percentage points higher among students that didn't undermatch compared to those who did, that actually enrolled in a selective college. And they found that 2/3 of the low-income students were lost at the application phase. They didn't even apply to the best college they could get into. Right now, if you're like me and you believe in a meritocracy, right, then students that do well in high school should aim as high as they possibly can. And we should be encouraging that and encouraging more of them to do so. What goes on in the black box? Well, we don't know. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Information matters, right? So students respond to inexpensive informational interventions. I'm sure you folks have seen, this is Carolyn Hoxby's work with Sarah Turner. Carolyn is an economist at Harvard and Sarah Turner is at UVA. They sent customized packets to students using the SAT data from the College Board. They identified students that scored high on the SAT but lived in low-income census tracts, right? The students that are likely to undermatch, according to the Bowen and Chingos and McPherson book. And they sent them customized packets that said, here are the options you have, here are the likely prices you'd pay, the net prices you'd pay. And they found that it increased the probability of applying to a peer institution, an institution that fit your academic qualifications, by about 80%. It improved the probability of enrolling in one of those institutions by almost 50%, by 46%, right? So if we know that helps students graduate, then that's gonna raise their probability of completion. This is Ben Castleman's work at also at UVA. This is where he texted students. He found that students who actually had already gotten in and were on the brink of matriculation just disappeared. They didn't show up over the summer. And he found that in some cities, that rate of what he calls summer melt was as high as 40%. He had students that just didn't show up. And so he developed a study that texted people, just randomly assigned people to receive a low-cost text intervention that said, you better do this, and show up for classes. And they lowered the rate of what they call summer melt by about 7 percentage points at a cost of $7 per student. Cheap, not expensive, not an expensive way to help people enroll. This is just quickly. This is at the sort of frontier of how of low-cost interventions. There's some experimentation with cluing students in at an early stage in their college experience to get the right mindset about being in college. That your mind is a muscle and it can be strengthened and improved. That other people feel the same way you did when they were freshmen. There's a good study in Science of this where they did a randomized study of a mindset intervention. I believe it was at Stanford. They don't identify the campus, but they did a mindset where they had the results of a hypothetical survey where students who were who had graduated prior, they made up a survey and said, how many of you felt like you weren't at home or you didn't have any friends? And they randomly assigned that to freshmen. And so the idea was that freshmen would say, oh, wow, everybody feels this way at some point. So I'm not alone. I shouldn't feel alone here on campus. They found that this tripled the chances, this small intervention tripled the chances that African Americans scored in the top quartile in their GPA. This is tiny. This costs almost nothing to do. University of Texas is now doing this at scale, where they have this thing, an intervention where they're calling it the UT mindset. Get the UT mindset. So this is and then here's the big kicker: institutions can improve and expand. And I've highlighted a couple here. There are obviously some examples here in North Carolina that are also terrific and have received national note. I just wanted to focus on a few outside. Georgia State. And these are not campuses that these are not campuses that you necessarily see at the top of the U.S. News and World Report rankings, right? That's because they take a lot of students. They have, they're not focused entirely on the inputs and who they exclude. They're actually taking more and more students and trying to build their capacity. So Georgia State University, just as an example, raised its graduation rate by 21 points over a period of about 15 or 20 years. It's now graduating 1,700 more students than it was 5 years ago, which is remarkable. How do they do it? And the graduation rates gaps are erased. Low-income students graduate at the same rate as high-income students. African-American students and Hispanic students graduate at higher rates than whites now, actually, at Georgia State. So how do they do it? Well, they did a number of things. They have a whole predictive analytics. President Spellings mentioned this notion of using data to target students and actually reach out to them and say, you're likely at risk of default of dropping out, or you're not taking the right course. You're not going to stay on path to graduation. So we're going to reach out and sort of notify you of that and recommend that you come in. The other thing that they did which is really remarkable, which is on the cost side, was they found that these gateway courses that students were taking, particularly in math, that they were having trouble completing, and they were actually stopping them from progressing. What they did was they found students that did really well in that gateway course, that got A's, and then they said, you're going to be supplemental instruction tutor now, the next semester. So it's your peer, because it's somebody you go to college with, and they use work-study money to pay for it. So it's a very cheap way to improve student completion rates of these gateway courses, which are really important. Florida State University is another one. You know, you can see the common themes there, so I won't read them off. But Florida State's another one where they set default academic program maps, right? Which says this notion of, I'll go to the next slide, this notion of the cafeteria model of college, right? Where you go in with your tray and you kind of wander around and you decide you're going to take a little bit of this, you're going to take a little bit of that. It might not be all in service of your major or all in service of your general ed requirements, right? So Florida State said, no, we're going to have default academic program maps that push you toward completing something. We're going to develop exploratory majors. So you have to enroll in an exploratory major when you start college. And I know some people, you know, for some people that's hard to imagine because they took, you know, anthropology and archaeology and religion, sort of like I did. But the default program map, it takes the guesswork out of how do you get from point A to point B, right? And then the proactive advising, right? I can't stress this enough. Advising on college campuses tends to be people who come to the office and sit in the waiting room and then meet with a counselor, get some help. We know who those folks are, right? They're not the people often who are at risk of dropping out. So proactive advising, reaching out to people, grabbing their attention, saying, you need help, we're going to help you. Florida State raised its graduation rate from 2000 to 2009 from 44% to 61%. And it reduced the percentage of students graduating with excess credits from 30% to 5%, which is a big difference, big productivity gain, right? So here again, back to the cafeteria model. Davis Jenkins is one of the authors of Redesigning Community Colleges, a book from the Community College Research Center at Columbia, at Teachers College of Columbia. Highly recommend at least reading a summary of it or grabbing it. It describes a lot of the ways in which institutions have to change. This stuff is not easy to do often. You have to bring departments together. You have to bring faculty together to discuss what exactly an exploratory major looks like. You have to, the proactive advising is not easy to organize. I'll just highlight a couple things down here quickly. So this is from the intervention that is essentially the biggest effect we've seen on completion, and it's at the CUNY community colleges. It's called ASAP, it's Accelerated Study and Associates Programs. And it is a big cocktail of things, if you will, a cocktail drug like we talk about in medical research. Students are required to enroll full-time. They go to block scheduled classes. They have very clear program maps. So point A to point B is clear. They get a tuition waiver in exchange for enrolling full-time. They get a tuition waiver, they get free textbooks, and they get a MetroCard, right? Expensive, right? That's an expensive intervention on the front end. But when you look at the fact that it doubles graduation rates for those students, the cost per degree goes way down. Productivity is much higher, right, thanks to ASAP. Civitas is one of these big data companies that uses the back-end analytics to sort of look to do predictive analytics about what students are likely to struggle in what classes. You can use their information to sort of tailor your student services. So what role, that brings up what role for technology, right? I know that President Smellings is working on a task force on education technology. I think it's a really important question. This is from a study that I did. I did a paper on MOOCs and how we should think about MOOCs, the massive open online courses. This just looks at developmental course completion rates in online, purely online versus in person. And you can see that the gray bar is always below the dark gray bar. The light gray bar is always below the dark gray bar. Sorry, they did it in grayscale, despite my best efforts. So point being here, it's really tempting to take the bright, shiny object, right? The new slick kind of online open access tool, and to say, let's apply that to our toughest problems. Let's apply that to students that graduate from high school not college ready, right? And lo and behold, that doesn't always go well, right? So my advice on this is to deploy technology wisely. That sounds trite, but it's worth saying, and in ways that allow for reallocation of labor, right? And that solve pain points and bottlenecks for students. So University of Central Florida, one of the ones I mentioned earlier that I didn't talk about in any detail. University of Central Florida has built UCF Online, 38% of all credits at UCF are awarded online now. 78% of students at UCF take an online course or a hybrid course. One of the things they've done is they found the bottleneck courses that students can't get into because there's not enough capacity, and they've created online versions of them that students can then get through and finish. So, and then you can use it behind the scenes on the predictive analytics front, obviously. I look forward to talking more about that as the discussion of the task force goes on. Just quickly, incentives matter for students, right? So lest we put all this responsibility on the institutions, right? Students have to work hard. Students have to choose courses wisely, have to take a full course load, and be prepared for college. We're finding that incentives matter, particularly when it comes to money. So grants tied to achieving academic benchmarks. MDRC did a randomized study of this across a bunch of states, Louisiana, Arizona, Florida, New Mexico. They found positive effects. They found positive effects on persistence and credit accumulation. This new idea that's taking root at institutions around the country is this finish in 4 notion. So if you're a student and you do everything right, you take a full course load and you take all the courses you're supposed to, if you're not going to be able to finish in 4 because the institution has failed to give you the courses you need, then the institution is going to cover the cost of that 5th year or that extra semester, right? So it's giving students a lot of incentive. It's giving institutions a lot of incentive to get students through. There are other versions of this that say we're gonna keep your tuition at what it was your sophomore year if you stay on track to graduation, which is, as you saw from those graphs, not a non-trivial financial benefit, right, to you and your family. This is from West Virginia. This is the West Virginia Promise. The West Virginia Promise program required students to reach a particular GPA and maintain that GPA in order to continue to receive the money. Judy Scott Clayton at Teachers College did a terrific study of this and found that it raised on-time graduation rates by 7%, for 7 percentage points, right? Which is not, again, non-trivial growth. So quickly, how are states defining driving reform? All right, and I know we're going to talk a lot about this over the next few years, and I'm looking forward to that. Some of this isn't rocket science. Some of this is hard work, but it's not rocket science. Setting attainment goals and coming up with a strategic plan is a big part of how states have improved, in my opinion. They're experimenting with outcomes-based funding. There's some questions about how outcomes-based funding works and how to design it properly. Some states have taken this guided pathway notion that I described earlier about the path from point A to point B, and they've actually put it in state statute and said the institutions have to start thinking about exploratory majors and so on. Data and transparency for informing students, and then new educational models. So who should we look to as far as the attainment goals? Well, Tennessee is the state that everybody talks about. They have the Drive to 55. It was coupled with the Complete College Tennessee Act, which always helps to have sort of a strategic plan and goals coupled with an actual legislative directive. The Complete College Tennessee Act set up a master plan for Tennessee. It set up an outcomes-based funding formula. It defined articulation more clearly between institutions, 2-year and 4-year. And it set up a sort of way to measure progress and a way to report on progress to stakeholders around the state. And they didn't leave out research here. The research enhancement was a big piece of the Complete College Tennessee Act. Texas, a little shout out to President Spellings and Jay, home state. Closing the gap. Texas has been at this for a while, not surprisingly. Texas has been an education reform leader for a long time. Closing the gaps was in 2000. Closing the gaps said we're going to close the gaps between participation, success, excellence, and research. And there was a conscious effort on Texas's part to make sure that enrollments and graduation more closely resembled the demographics of Texas, which at the time they really didn't. And it's a credit to the leadership down there that they have stuck this effort out. And now they've shifted to a model 60 by 30 Texas, which is reaching an attainment rate of 60% by 2030. Colorado, you can look up. Colorado Competes is their strategic plan. You can take a look at that if you'd like. Lots to learn from other states here, for sure. Outcomes-based funding, quickly. HCM Strategist, which is a firm in Washington that tracks these developments. 2/3 of states are developing or implementing an outcome-based funding formula, which means we're going to pay you some percentage of what you get from the state based on your performance. Graduation rates, degrees produced, in some cases retention rates, and so on. It's a widespread movement across the country. Again, we have a lot to learn. This just says they break them up into types, and then they also ask whether it's 2-year, 4-year, or both. Most states have actually done one or the other. So it's worth talking about. So does it work? This is an example of outcomes-based funding. So Tennessee, again, 85% of state funding tied to outcomes, right? Texas State Technical College, which is a 2-year system, has a really interesting model, which is it's the returned value. So how much colleges get from the state is directly reflects what percentage of their graduates earn above minimum wage. And they get a slice of that value that the colleges are returning to Texas, right? So it's an interesting way to think about aligning the incentives, again, not just with graduation, but with the quality of your programs and their labor market value. So does it work? Well, there's a lot of debate about this. Does it work, right? And a couple studies of it recently have found very little effect. One study that's just hot off the presses found some evidence that schools that were subject to this, to outcomes-based funding, reduce their Pell enrollments, which we don't want to do that. We don't want to create a system that gives schools incentive to simply become more selective and keep people out. You have to think carefully about the design is the message here. It's not consistent across states. This is the percentage of money that's given out based on outcomes. North Carolina is way down here. There's a tiny sliver, according to this study, which is, again, from HCM Strategists. You can see Tennessee up here. So if you treat this as one treatment in a study, you can see why you might get lots of different effects, right? Because it's all over the map. So that's worth thinking about. Transparency in data. This is a big one that's really important to consumers and to stakeholders. We ought to know what value the system's returning to the state. And I know North Carolina's got a lot of excellent data. They have dashboards that are terrific that I've looked over. The movement thus far has been in linking post-secondary records to wage records from once you leave college, right? And to say, students that took this program at this institution earn this much on average. Here's the confidence interval around that, and so on. Helpful. I understand why institutions are reticent to say that's how we should be measured. It's not the only way that they should be measured, but it's good. It's an important consumer disclosure, in my opinion. Students should know this. And only a few states, it's growing, but only a few states report labor market outcomes at a program level in a way that's publicly accessible. So if you want to see more of this, go to a website called collegemeasures.org. It collects all the states that do this. It collects their labor market data. And it's really informative. You can actually look across it. Much less common cost, productivity, and remediation rates. It's really hard to find information on how often students are referred to remediation, which, no surprise, what happens is the high schools sort of say, well, I didn't know that we were graduating students that weren't college ready. Right? There's no feedback loop. There's no sort of established way for the colleges to report back and say, you're sending us kids with high school diplomas that aren't ready for this stuff, right? Kentucky does this at scale. They actually do these feedback reports as part of state policy. Student learning is extremely rare, as President Spellings can attest to. The University of Texas system, to their credit, was doing it. And I promise this is not Texas heavy because of President Spellings and Jay, okay? They're just doing a lot of interesting stuff down there. University of Texas system was doing this. UT Austin, so what they were measuring was the value added. So they measured students early on, like the sophomore year, and then they measured them again later on in college. Right? Takes away this sort of input advantage because you're only asking how much value are you adding. So if you take the best students but don't teach them anything, they don't gain it all on that. So the interesting thing in Texas is that UT was not as happy about their results as they thought they would be. So UT has now said, oh, we're going to abandon our student learning to save money, right? It's a drop in the bucket, folks. I don't need to tell you that. It's pennies on the dollar, right? But the institutions that tended to stand out on this, again, were not the institutions that you think about in the top U.S. News and World Report rankings, right? UTEP did particularly well, as I recall, and some others. So student learning is at the sort of frontier. We're still not there yet. New models and credentials. I'm happy to talk about this a little more in the Q&A, so we're not talking at you the whole time. But competency-based education is all the rage. Competency-based around the country. Competency-based education says, why should we award credits based on how long you sit in class for 16 weeks or 15 weeks? Why don't we allow you to proceed at your own pace? Once you've learned the material, take an assessment, get the credit, move on. So you see examples of this around the state. Western governors now have state affiliates where the state has actually brought them in and made them essentially a quasi-state institution. College for America is a private nonprofit out of southern New Hampshire. UW Flex is the Wisconsin system. Governor Walker was instrumental in putting that forward, and Northern Arizona. There are some regulatory issues here with the feds. The federal government's not so sure they want to give out full student financial aid for these programs. The Inspector General has been very skeptical, but reformers are working on sort of ironing that out. Micro-credentials and stackable credentials. This is sort of the notion that why is the bachelor's degree and the associate's degree? We just arbitrarily decided on 60 credits and 120 credits. Why don't we give out smaller credentials that actually signal something to the labor market? Why don't we do that in addition to it, right? So maybe if you drop out, you actually get some things you can take with you that have labor market value. Stackable certificates is a notion that's mostly applicable to the two-year sector. University Learning Store is this new collaboration that's just getting underway between some elite colleges, Georgia Tech, Northwestern, University of Washington, and a couple UC system schools, to put online courses on the web that you can then pay a small fee to get a micro-credential from them. The MOOC providers were already at this, and so they're way ahead of the curve. But there are some traditional institutions that are buying into this. Georgia Tech and Udacity now have partnered up with AT&T to offer a computer science master's degree that has the exact same admissions requirements, content, and grading standards as their traditional in-person master's degree, but it's $6,000 as opposed to between $6,000 and $7,000, as opposed to the $40,000 of the in-person one costs. And so AT&T is using that program to train up its engineers. AT&T needs tens of thousands of engineers every year and to update their skills. What's happening outside of the traditional higher education, and I'm coming close to the end, so I'll take questions very shortly. So as I said, MOOCs, what now happens with MOOCs? Remember the year of the MOOC was 2012. That's long past now. Everybody thought the MOOCs were going to replace all the higher education. We wouldn't even be sitting here, right? If they had, it would just be sort of all tied up in a bow and everybody be learning online, right, from all over. That didn't happen, not surprisingly. Some of the futurists got that one wrong. What they're doing now, though, is they're doing, Udacity has this set of nano degrees, what they're calling nano degrees. This is back to that micro-credential issue. And they're mostly geared toward the tech industry, so data science, back-end web development, and so on. You can take an online course, it's self-paced, and then you can get a certificate of completion and take that to an employer and say, I passed Udacity's micro-credential. Boot camps are a new model of education. They're typically serving folks with a bachelor's degree already. Again, these are designed for jobs in the tech center, the tech industry. They take a student and you go through a 16-week, incredibly intense series of, not even a series of course, a single course. Actually, one of them says, here's the stock email to send your parents and loved ones to tell them they won't be hearing from you or seeing you for 16 weeks, right? And it's very intense. You work in teams and the instructors are sort of hovering over you, right? Because it's this startup culture, right? It's sort of, we got to get this stuff done, we got to get this developed. So in other words, it's not a whole lot like traditional college, right? It's not online. This is mostly all in person, the boot camps. Again, not rocket science, right? Putting people in the room with other smart people and with instructors who give them attention tends to breed success. And then some bridge programs, which are essentially bridge programs either into the workforce or into college. And Year Up is one that's really remarkable. Year Up works in cities around the country mostly with low-income youth, and you go to Year Up for a year and you get about 6 months of instruction in basic skills, not just workplace skills, but also basic skills you might need for college. And you do an internship with a partner employer, and they pay you a wage. And then at the end of the Year Up, you get some advising on whether you should go to college, whether you're ready for college and which college you should go to, or whether you should join the workforce. And a lot of Year Up grads get hired by their internship folks. The rest of these you can look up on your own. New financing models is another thing that's coming to the fore here. So as we're talking about those repayment problems, right? Part of the reason we have some repayment problems is that loans are difficult. Loans are a tough financial product to finance a risky investment, right? Because you typically pay back a loan on a fixed amortization schedule, which means if you're a recent college grad or dropout, you're paying the biggest percentage of your income when you can least afford it, and you're paying a much lower percentage of your income later on when you can most afford it. So an income share agreement sort of shifts that, and it says, A set of investors are going to provide you with the capital to pay for your education up front in return for a percentage of your income for a fixed period of time, right? Purdue is actually offering this now to its students via its foundation. So if you're an engineering student at Purdue, I think you can pledge, I'm not going to get the percentage exactly right, I think you can pledge something around 9% of your income for 9 years. Only juniors and seniors, because they're sort of taken as a pilot, they're taking some of the students who are already advanced. And so we'll see how that works out. But it's a safer model for financing in some ways, because if you don't make anything, you don't pay it back. Right? If you don't make anything in the near term, you don't pay it back. But if you make a lot, right, then the investor has incentive to help you to succeed, because it aligns the incentives between the investor, the person who's providing the capital, and the student, unlike the federal loan program, which doesn't do that now, right? Federal loan program doesn't do that at all. Employer partnerships, you folks have probably heard about the college achievement partnership between Starbucks and Arizona State. So I want to leave some questions on the board that we will be tackling, undoubtedly tackling as a system. How should we measure success? And there's a big push. The completion agenda has pushed us to measure paper credentials. There are big questions as to whether that's what we should be measuring. A paper credential that's not worth anything is not worth anything. And it's not worth anything whether somebody else paid for it or not. Should we measure student learning? I tend to think that's a great measure. Institutions are understandably curious about what instrument you could use that would adequately do that. And how do you get the incentives right for students? If it's a low stakes assessment, they may not take it seriously, right? I know Texas has tried to give out gift cards and so on to get you to come take the assessment. Labor market outcomes, we've talked a lot about that already. Cost effectiveness, I think, is one that we tend to just sort of downplay, right? Most of the performance-based funding schemes don't pay much attention to this. I think that cost effectiveness is the way that we should think about investments in higher ed. We shouldn't just think about upfront costs, because some of the interventions that actually help colleges to do better and to refocus their energies, they cost money up front, but they're much more productive downstream, right? So thinking about these things as investments that boost cost effectiveness, but then checking, trust but verify, right? Checking to see whether those investments actually were cost effective, and if they're not, we move on to something else. So lay that question on the table. How do we avoid unintended consequences? That's pretty clear. If we start counting paper credentials, we might give folks either incentive to keep students out, right, or incentive to just print diplomas, both of which are not particularly helpful for the attainment agenda and for the economy of the state. Right? How do we change cost structures at institutions? This is a difficult question, and one that I look forward to talking with you all about. What tends to happen in higher education is even when colleges are sort of at the forefront of choosing interventions that tend to help them perform better and to serve students better, they tend to be layered on top of the old system. So everything just accretes over time, right? So you're really just adding fixed costs. You're not reallocating on the basis of something that's been found to be more effective. I understand why that is, because the politics of sort of getting rid of this branch of student services are difficult, but it is worth thinking about, because if we continue to just roll the extra cost into the tuition bundle, right? We're still gonna have some of the same problems we had that I highlighted up front. Folks are gonna be not as pleased. So yeah, reallocating and replacing frees up resources, right? What to do about college readiness? I'm being a little bit flip here. There are some great ideas about what to do about college readiness, but it is the problem that nobody seems to want to own most of the time, right? K-12 system says, not our fault, right? Higher ed system says, you're sending us a bunch of bad raw material, right? So every system in the country is facing this problem, and we do have to think hard about how we solve it. I know there's a lot of thinking down here about how best to do that. And then I'll just leave you with where will federal policy go? Federal policy is very much in flux right now. The presidential election is going to decide some of that. How Congress shakes out is going to shape some of it too. The free public option, there are variations on the free public option. Bernie Sanders is the most extreme with the free public 4 years. But what Democrats seem to be moving toward is a federal-state partnership, right? Where the feds funnel in a bunch of money, sort of like Medicaid, right? Where the feds funnel in a bunch of money and the states pony up some money. My reaction to that is manyfold, and we can talk about it at the break. But make no mistake, right? As much as you might like federal money, make no mistake that federal money is going to come with a lot of strings attached, and it's going to sort of change the relationship between states and their institutions in a way that I don't think is helpful from my perspective. But we'll be happy to entertain that. Lower barriers to entry and expand choice. This is sort of the work I've been doing on the right. AEI is a right center think tank. We've been trying to say, look, we shouldn't just focus in on one set of schools. We should actually lower the barriers to entry and allow lots of providers to compete for business, and actually encourage institutions and providers to collaborate, right? So have public institutions be able to partner with a boot camp or be able to partner with a Year Up, right? To build a pipeline of qualified students. So I think that's my last one. Yeah, it is. So I'd be happy to take some questions. Sorry to talk at you for that long, but I had a lot to say. So I've been doing this for seven odd years. So please, any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Yep. Sorry.
Back.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
You want my mic on? So I just had one comment and then one question. My comment, I really like the idea of reaching out to students proactively with their advisors through texting. I mean, myself, my first 2 years before I was involved, I really didn't check my email at all. And I know many students who they go 4 years and they don't check their email, so that's a problem. And then my question, you discussed, the need for programs to increase low-value returns in part by focusing and knowing graduation, debt and loan expectations before beginning the program. But I believe transparency is great. But for me, as a political science and English major, humanities student, I am worried in some part how that generally slants towards STEM-related programs. And if so, what can you say, I guess, to people like me or in humanities that can be and are concerned about that trend and what our degree may look like from, a more STEM institution, me going to state in particular. So yeah, thank you.
Good questions. What I would say is congratulations for being a humanities major. I was one. I was a history major as an undergrad. I like to think it served me particularly well. I'll let you all be the judge of that. I think there's a mistake that people make, and I think it's an increasingly chronic mistake, and that is because college has gotten so expensive. Students are focused on what they think is going to deliver the economic benefit, the biggest economic benefit. And I think STEM's a little bit of a different case here, but I think what I'm saying is that students have tended to shift toward away from the liberal arts, let's say, and toward things that are more pre-professional, right? So communications and business and marketing. The data on some of this suggests that's actually it's not the case that those are more lucrative after graduation. And if you believe the Academically Adrift study by Richard Arum and Joseph Araksa, they found that those programs were actually not as rigorous often as some of the programs in the liberal arts and STEM. So I do think, and that's not to sort of ding any of those departments, but I do think that there's a potential to make have a mistaken impression. And so the point is that actually clarifying those value propositions more clearly can actually help inform people that they don't need to just necessarily go away from what they're interested in, but in some cases they might want to, right? The way I've been thinking about the information side is that states and the federal government in particular should not be matchmakers. They shouldn't be matchmakers for students. We should leave that to the private sector. The private sector should take the data and any number of rankings and ratings and help students pick. But we do have an obligation, I think, as policymakers to warn people off of options that are going to do them potential financial harm, right? So investing in something that's not worth the investment, I do think we should clarify that for consumers. And we can't not clarify that and then complain when they make the investment, right? We can't keep them in the dark and then say, well, all these people are borrowing irresponsibly and taking the wrong programs and so on. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Hannah.
This is a great presentation. I'm real excited, even though you're from New Jersey, by the way. I was just going to say that in looking at when we were talking about student success and resource allocation and how things are structured, when we look at our graduation rates collectively, they look pretty good. Mm-hmm. They really do. But then if you back out the top 3 campuses, They don't. At the same time, Andrew, if you look at the per pupil funding, we look really good as a nation, I mean, as a system within the United States. But if you back out the top two or three there also, the per pupil funding does not necessarily match the challenge or the need of the campus. And it's just, it's one of those challenges that the devil is in the details. And I'm not saying that I think we should take the money from our high-performing flagships. I think that would be devastating. But our resource allocation over the years has been added on and shifted, but it hadn't really been, we haven't really addressed the larger needs on some of our campuses.
Well, let me be the first to say that today, I'm not going to weigh in on the conflict between the flagships and the other campuses. That seems like it'd be a bad idea. But I will say that I'm sympathetic to the question. This is an issue that folks around the country are dealing with. Is to say, traditionally our funding formulas have done one thing, and we should maybe think about shifting them to do something else, right? To fund a different, not necessarily even just different institutions, but on the basis of different criteria, right? Not just enrollments, but outcomes. And so part of what I think is important on the outcomes-based funding side in particular is thinking in terms of value added, right? So we don't want to just measure level measures, right? We want to level and value added meaning either to the individual student or also over time, sort of continuous improvement, right? Are you making gains? So I would say.
And I don't want to imply at all, I think it would be devastating if we tore down the flagships. I don't mean that. But we've got to find better ways to fund the other campuses that have huge challenges if we're going to educate the population that's coming at us.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear everybody's thoughts on how we should do that. It's something that will be obviously at the core of the work that we're doing here. So,
I believe David and then Steve.
First of all, welcome aboard. Looking excited to get you here and looking for you. A quick clarification, then a comment question. On this Closing the Gaps Texas 60-30 program, I'm assuming 60% is 4-year plus 2-year attainment rates,
Yes.
not 4-year. And same with
Yes,
Tennessee.
and
They're
certificates,
Drive
yep.
to 55
Yes.
is there? Okay.
sorry, I should have clarified that.
You talked a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question about your big question mark. I think it's an issue I've gotten real interested in lately. The ready for college idea. We have a huge problem in rural North Carolina, and college readiness is affected by a number of factors. Obviously, environment, different things. Some things we can't always control or change, but some things we can, like facilities, and that's a very real issue in some rural parts of the state. I'd be interested in seeing what other states. We've got to get more innovative and visionary about the way we build brick and mortar institutions for high school kids and elementary kids. I'd be real interested in some thoughts, and you don't have to do it today, just something to think about before you come on board, about what some other states are doing. There's a bill right now in the Senate that will kind of expand on a pilot project that allows private developers to build schools and lease them back to school systems. To me, at least at a first blush, pretty solid way to do things because there's no upfront capital outlay on part of the state. But both our Treasury Department and our Department of Public Construction are not in favor of it. So it's kind of, we've got to get more aggressive about being more visionary about how we look at that, because that's a huge issue in some parts of, particularly rural parts of the state, that truly affects kids' readiness. It affects their ability to learn in their current environment to be ready for college. So I'd just be interested, like I say, you don't have to do it today, but as you're looking over the next few months, thinking about it, looking at what other states maybe have done. Sure. And just really excited about having a true policy shop in here too. I think this is going to be great for us as a board, but hopefully, ultimately, it improves the performance of our schools too.
I appreciate that. I'll just a couple quick thoughts on the remediation issue. As I said, states around the country are dealing with this. It's not an easy one to fix. I think it's worth kind of disaggregating the problem into two distinct problems. One of which is there's sort of a diagnostic problem for students that may not recognize what the stakes are of the assessment they're sitting down to take when they matriculate at the community college or at the 4-year. And what I mean by that is we should develop models that allow students to diagnose their needs earlier and actually brush up on those things before they get here. And California has done this. California has the early assessment program, and it's, if you're going to go to Cal State, you take that exam as a junior rising to senior. It gives you a sense of what you need to do in that last year to get ready for college, and it gives you a menu of options. One of which is to take some courses, some self-paced courses online. So if you're in a remote area, they say here, you can access these through broadband, and it'll help you brush up on what you need to get done before you show up at the Cal State and waste a lot of your money on remedial credits that don't count. The other side of it is, how do we get people better prepared from high school? Much harder problem to solve. So I think it's worth sort of thinking about those different problems and which ones we can get traction on for more quickly and more inexpensively.
Thank you. Steve?
I want to just say I agree with Hannah that this is exactly the kind of level that I think we wanted to look at these issues. And I'm very glad to have your presentation. And I thank President Spellings for bringing it to us because it gives us a sense of what's going on out there, which I think is important for us to always remember. But I'm trying to get to the bottom line of your debt presentation. And because that's very important. And I take away from your presentation that really the issue is not the debt, but we've got to improve student success so that somebody who has student success, but, well, that's okay if they have the debt. And that's what I gleaned from what you said. Is that what you think?
So I think that my thinking on this is that we run the risk of being so hysterical about student debt that we actually convince students that would benefit from taking on some small amount of debt to go to a good program or a great program, or in some cases to go, to the place that's a little bit further away rather than the place that's closest to home. We might dissuade them from doing that. And that's a real, there's already debt aversion on the part of low-income families and in particular racial minorities. So I do think we need to be concerned about that. What I would say is that we need to have a conversation like we're having across the country about what the right balance is between public and private. But make no mistake, private financing of higher education, which is all the tuition fees and the borrowing, right? That's what helps systems maintain access, right? Because if you were to go to purely public funding, we would have a system that looks more like what we have in Europe, right? Where students that get in don't pay anything for tuition, but they have huge bottlenecks about who gets in, and they ration access. Why? Because if enrollments grow and public generosity doesn't keep pace with that enrollment growth, the institutions face, if they can't charge tuition or they have to have the tuition capped, they face a choice, which is we can either lower the quality of our education, which gets us to this value question, or we can ration access. And so and not speaking of North Carolina in particular here, but speaking of the national question, the free public option doesn't seem to have, the people who are discussing that and promoting it haven't seemed to really tackle that potential shortage issue. We saw it in California, right? So the California community colleges have a cap on their tuition. The recession drove tons of students back into the California community college system. State funding didn't keep pace. The tuition was capped. They turned away 600,000 students, right? And so we can have a discussion about college access and what the right match is for students, but we do have to consider sort of the balance between public and private. And my point was essentially, sorry, go on.
I have one follow-up on that.
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. we could talk a long time about that. But we always hear about this. You talk about our graduation rate. Florida State went from 44% to 61% in 6 years. You talked about how great North Carolina's 6-year rate is. This is we have bills in the legislature now. NC GAP. We got the bill that's being discussed now, the $500, and it seems to be motivated by wanting to get the completion rates up. My question has always been, what is the good completion rate? Mm-hmm. When do you celebrate success that you as a system have done what is reasonable to reach the best you can do? Is it 61%? Is it 60%? What?
That's a terrific question. This is why I think what we need to do, like the 2.0 version of the completion agenda, let's say across the country, is to focus less on paper credentials and focus a lot more on value. So whether that's student learning, value in the labor market, and that's why some of the outcomes-based funding systems that actually look at how students do once they get out into the system. Not that anybody here should adopt those wholesale, but they do kind of get to that issue. I think very clearly, because they say, look, even if you went somewhere for a year or two and you got some skills that were really useful to you, if you do well in the economy, that should be a success. And vice versa, if you went somewhere for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, sat through the classes, finished, that's not, but come out with sort of, not the same.
That's kind of an ambiguous answer. I mean,
So what's the right graduation
for a
rate?
policymaker,
He needs a number.
if you're a legislator, when is it a good record? You're saying basically it could be whatever, as long as whatever the kid got out of it, for if they were in there for a year or 2 years. But when as a policymaker should we find contentment in the number?
I think what I would say is that a starting place on that is to compare your institution to a peer institution or set of peer institutions around the country, and say, how are we doing compared to those other institutions? Do we do well? Do we do not as well? So that spread that I showed with the SAT scores, I think that's a place to start for policymakers. I think we do need to acknowledge that different institutions serve different students, and a level-based measure is going to often lead you to believe that the value added is highest at the schools that take the best students, which is not necessarily true. So I do think comparing to peer institutions, but not being content to be in the middle of your peer institutions, you should be at the top. And we should figure out ways to get you to help get you to the top. I do think in any of this, anytime we're going to tie stakes, this is why this slide's here, and this is why the next slide's there too, right? Anytime we're going to tie any kind of stakes to outcomes, we have to be very careful about what we're actually measuring. If we can't just measure paper credentials, and we can't just measure completion rates. There are lots of ways to gain your completion rate, right? We don't want to necessarily encourage the gamesmanship. We want to encourage the actual hard work. Ambiguous answer. I'm still moving out of my role as a policy wonk to a policy maker. So I'll hopefully have a much more precise answer in 3 months for you.
Thanks, Steve. I can tell you and Andrew are going to have a number of conversations in the future. Henry, I think Henry's next, then I'll get Rodney.
Sure.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
I was, kind of struck by what other systems are doing to incentivize success. And thinking about the fact we do have a bill here in the Senate, Senator Apodaca's bill right now, which I think has a lot of positive things. I know there's a lot of discussion about it right now. But while the Senate is, while the leadership is looking at innovative ideas, and ultimately it's the same goal, which is incentivizing success, I think we ought to take a look at this as a board and try to help with that mission. I've mentioned this once before. Florida Gulf Coast right now, for instance, if you graduate in 4 years, not 4 years in a day, but if you graduate in 4 years at Florida Gulf Coast right now, they will refund you your entire 4 years of tuition. Not 4 years in a day. You have to graduate in 4 years. And the question has always been, where does that money come from?
I'm wondering myself.
We now have a legislature that's beginning to say, hey, we're willing to look at some of these things. And so and they're having some ideas of their own. I would encourage our board to come up with some of our own to help them in that mission.
I think Andrew will be able to help us with that.
Yeah.
Rodney.
Andrew, welcome to North Carolina. We look so forward to working with you in the days ahead.
Thanks.
I had a question regarding the stackable certificates. And what do you see about that really helping the students towards, I guess, getting optimal learning outcomes? Is that to be a reward for just sitting in a class, or is it really something that can be impactful and meaningful?
So I think one of the my answer to this is usually the following, which is if you think about people who complete a bachelor's degree, right? We actually have a stackable system, right? As long as our bachelor's degree was from an accredited college, we can take it to any master's program. We can take it then to any PhD program. We can go back for an MBA. All those credits count toward the broader project, right, of our education. And it happens that at some levels, that's not always true. So before you complete your bachelor's degree, you have to go sort of through it's often a big rigmarole, right, about whether credits transfer or not. So the stackability for me is a question about, for students who are not ready and not interested in signing up for 2 years of full-time enrollment or 4 years of full-time enrollment, how can we think about options that provide them with something closer to what they're after? But then at the same time say, hey, look, if you want to enter the workforce and then you realize you've reached your ceiling after a year or two and you want to come back, that foundation, we're going to layer the next layer on top of it, right? So Texas is doing this at Brazosport College. They're doing it in the petrochemical industry in partnership with Dow and BASF. And you know, they've got a short 16-week basics of petrochemical management, petrochemical manufacturing. Students can then come back and use that foundation to build toward an associate's degree in petrochemical manufacturing, and then you can take that if you wanted to go get a bachelor's later. So I think in some ways what it does is it lowers the stakes in some sense of having to be all or nothing, right? Having to sign up for the full freight or not. And so it's worth experimenting with, worth piloting, worth thinking about. I think around the country. Yeah.
I think Joe McNeil has a question, and then we'll probably end this session.
A great presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome aboard. I was very interested that you kind of alluded to the fact that student learning was really the gold standard of what you would like to measure, but it seemed to be an ephemeral term that is extremely difficult to quantify. Are there any models out there that you think are making progress towards really being able to evaluate that? It seems to me like a moving target.
So the one that's best known is the one that they use in Texas, and it's the instrument that underlies the academically adrift study, which is the CLA, the Collegiate Learning Assessment. And now it's the CLA Plus. It's an improved version of the CLA, and it's designed to measure critical thinking. It's not designed to measure sort of discipline-specific thinking. It's designed to measure: can you solve problems? Can you make an argument? Can you make an argument using evidence and communicate it effectively? So that's one model. One of the issues with that model, again, is the stakes. So it's not clear that students will necessarily take it seriously if they don't think there are any stakes attached to it. So colleges have a reliability issue potentially there. There's another project at the American Association of Colleges and Universities that's focused on student learning, a much broader vision of student learning, and is looking at actual assignments that students have completed in a given course, and sort of evaluating those assignments and measuring in a much more holistic way. It's hard to know how you take that to scale in an affordable way, but they are doing some important and interesting work, helping to sort of set expectations about what a given course or major, what outcomes, what learning outcomes that should lead to, both content knowledge and ability to apply the content in problem solving. So those are a couple opportunities. Those are a couple options. You know, higher ed is reticent to submit to standardization, and I don't think that's always a bad thing. I think it's a great thing in many cases. It's why we have a system that looks the way it does in terms of diverse set of offerings. But we do need to think about how we can come up with a consistent way to measure the value added.
Okay. Andrew, thank you very much. That was a fascinating presentation. I think our entire board looks forward to getting you here in Chapel Hill in the summer and to many more discussions of this type in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Now, I knew this was going to be a great session this morning, and it's turned out that way so far, and we have the second half coming up. Many of you have heard James Johnson in the past. I know I have. He has a fascinating presentation, and this morning we're going to hear about demographic changes impacting North Carolina. James is a William R. Keenan Jr. Distinguished Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship and Director of the Urban Investment Strategy Center at UNC Chapel Hill. So let's welcome James to our board meeting this morning. James, thanks for being here.
Chairman, can you take a break?
A break? What are you talking about?
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna take a break.
You're going.
All right, James, let's have a 5-minute break. I've got a revolt on my hands.
And I can use that? Oh, cool.
Check.
Please take your seats. Okay, let's get going. Jim's ready to go, so
Good morning.
take it away.
I'm delighted to have an opportunity to share a few thoughts with you this morning. Appreciate the opportunity to listen to Andrew and Mr. Puckett share their views. I'm a demographer by training, and what I will begin to, you said 368? 388. I'm told to tell you that the presentation begins in your electronic file at 368. 388, see? You can tell I wasn't a banker. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation, every region, and every state, including the great state of North Carolina, is in the midst of an unprecedented demographic transformation. The kinds of changes we find ourselves in the midst of, you're going to have to buckle your seatbelt to deal with them. And if you ignore them at your own peril. Lots of things we can debate. Basic demography is not one of them. I assure you, if you're 5 years old today, 5 years from now, you're going to be 10 years old. Birthday comes the same time every year. You just add one to what it was last year. And so the things that we're going to be talking about now are the most predictable things in the world. The kinds of changes this state is in the midst of are going to dramatically transform all of our social, economic, and political institutions, including the business of both K-12 and higher education. And I want to focus on both of them because from a business standpoint, I think it's incumbent upon us to ask the question, what's the customer that's walking in the door going to be like in terms of his or her skill set moving forward? So in the time allotted me, I want to talk about what the disruptive demographic changes are and what I see as some of the things. Normally when I do this talk, I talk about the 6 big disruptive trends. We don't have time to talk about all 6 of them today, but I listed them there, and if you're interested, there's a publication with all of them there. What I want to do in the time allotted me is talk about 2 colorful demographic processes that undergird the 6 disruptive demographic trends. And the 2 colorful processes I think we need to think about and incorporate, you need to think about and incorporate in your strategic planning process, because these 2 colorful processes are so important for our future competitiveness in the highly volatile global economy of the 21st century, where the new normal is certain uncertainty. And then I want to talk about, at the intersection of these 2 colorful processes, is a pernicious problem for us in this country that I've defined in a recent paper called the triple whammy of geographic disadvantage. And if we don't solve this problem, we're going to be in deep, deep yogurt in the highly volatile economy of the 21st century, where the new normal is certain uncertainty. And then I want to talk about some of the stuff that we've already begun to do to address some of these challenges. The 2 colorful processes are what I call the browning and graying of America. The browning and graying of America. I want to talk about the browning first. The browning is about immigration-driven population change in our state, in our nation. And if you look at the long-range picture going back to the beginning of the 20th century and moving forward, what you will see is that in this country, historically, we kept immigration pretty low from about the turn of the 20th century until the mid-1960s, and then you see a precipitous increase in immigration and the number of people who are foreign-born in our country. 1965 is the crucial year, because prior to 1965, we had an immigration law in this country that said if we were going to allow the foreign-born to come to America, it was important that they not upset the existing racial and ethnic balance of our country as it existed at the turn of the 20th century. So we had an express preference for people who were phenotypically similar to Anglo-Saxons, people who come to America, learn to speak English, anglicize their name, and this thing called a melting pot was supposed to work. In other words, we operated on a quota system that favored people from Europe. And that meant that the the system was discriminatory against people from certain regions of the world. You go back to the 1880s, for an example, we had an immigration law called the Chinese Exclusion Law. They shouldn't be allowed to come to America because it would be, quote unquote, difficult to assimilate into mainstream society. Fast forward to the first decade of the 20th century, we defined what became known as the Asiatic Barrier region that included Japan. Shouldn't be allowed to come to America because it would be, quote unquote, difficult to assimilate into mainstream society. We had all of these theories about cultural inferiority and the like, and we codified it in terms of our immigration law in an exclusionary way. That all changed in 1965, coincident with the civil rights movement in domestic life. We liberalized our immigration law via something called the Hart-Celler Act of that year. Put a pin in it because it's one of the most profound pieces of legislation in our history, because what it did was eliminate those discriminatory provisions based on geographic origin, opening up the doors of our country to people who heretofore had not been allowed to come in relatively large numbers. Basically people from Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. This is such a profound piece of legislation that we use it to distinguish two groups of immigrants in America. Anybody arriving prior to 1965, we call them the old immigrants, and we refer to them as the invisible minorities. Anybody arriving since 1965, we call them the new immigrants, and we refer to them as the visible minorities. Why visible? Phenotypically different from the Anglo-Saxon model. Yes, they can always go through the assimilation process and the like, but you will always know that they're different because their phenotype is different. So takeaway number one, undergirding the browning of America, is a fundamental shift in geographic origin. Takeaway number two is a fundamental shift in phenotype. Takeaway number three, you can tell by the data that the numbers change dramatically over time, where today we have about 42 million people in this country who are foreign born, and the majority of them are people of color, primarily from Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. If you want to see the data, if you look at 2014, 42 million people in our country, you will note that about 46% of them are Hispanic. You will note that the second largest group, 26%, are Asian. Note that the share who were white, not Hispanic, was around 18%. That's radically different from the earlier period prior to 1965, because the numerical majority of them were from Europe. So we're talking about a profound transformation in our society. And when I talk about the browning of America, what I'm talking about is this fundamental shift in geographic origin, fundamental shift in phenotype, and fundamental shift in the numbers, where it's a very diverse pool of people today that are dramatically transforming our society and our communities. Undergirding that shift and changing mix of our population is also a profound shift in marriage patterns. The out-marriage rate means you marry someone of a different racial or ethnic group than you belong to, doubled between 1980 and 2008 among newly married couples, and it went from 3% of all marriages to about 8% of all marriages among currently married couples. Well, who's doing all this hooking up in strange ways? 41% of those marriages are between Hispanics and whites. About 15% of them are between Asians and whites, and in about 16% of the cases, both marriage partners are non-white. And you note that black-white marriages, which were illegal in this country up until the mid-1960s, were only accounted for about 11% of these marriages. And there's this other group, I don't know who the heck they are, but they're having fun in terms of it. What's the significance here? The school-age population walking into our K-12 and higher education system in the future won't fit into the nice and neat little crucibles we're accustomed to putting them in, and they won't allow you to put them in those clusters. And further, it raises a whole series of questions about what the structure of education that we're offering people. Whose history all of a sudden do we teach when we have a far more diverse kind of population? And these marriage patterns are further contributing to the changing and shifting complexion of our society. Corporate America got it a long time ago. Some of you may remember the Cheerios commercial. Came out a couple years ago, a couple of years back with the Super Bowl, where black guy sleeping on the couch. This little girl comes up to him and dumps Cheerios on his chest. It's supposed to be heart healthy, y'all. And it's obvious this little kid is mixed. And then the camera shifts to the wife. And the wife is white. Did you follow the Twitter traffic? Ugly stuff. but I like Cheerios, heart healthy. And the company wasn't bothered by the angst. So the next year at the Super Bowl, they had another commercial. Same family, and the woman pregnant again. What are they saying? This is America, get over it. And so we're gonna have to figure out how, if we got a problem, get over it, because this is the reality that is going on, that this outmarriage pattern is further changing the complexion of the society, and the students that walk into our classes, be it in K-12 or higher education, are going to be far more diverse in the future. What's the significance of what I talk about the browning of America? We added about 27 million people to our population during the first decade of the new millennium. 92% of them were non-white, everybody but non-Hispanic whites, and about 56% of them were Hispanic. We are a migration magnet. We added 1.5 million people to our population during the first decade of the new millennium. 61% of them were non-white, and about 28% of them were Hispanic, because we're known as a new Hispanic magnet. We're an emergent kind of a community compared to California, Texas, and other places. But you begin to see how this whole process is enveloping our society and our community. This is so important for our future and so important to the strategic planning process that you're undertaking now, because what you have to understand is that migration and immigration are age-selective processes. What does that mean? It means far more young people migrate and immigrate than old people. That means old people don't move. They move slower and at a lower propensity than young folk. One more piece of this story. I'm going to say this and run out and go back to my day job. Young people are more likely to have children than old folk. Add those two things together, it has an impact on the age structure in your society. Look at the data. In 2014, the median age of the US population was about 38. Half of us older than that, half of us younger than that. Somebody tell me what the median age of a Hispanic is in America. 28 years old. Now, how many of you have heard in the immigration debate that Hispanics are a burden on the healthcare system in America? Don't get quiet on me now.
There we go.
Okay. What kind of major health problems do you have in your median age 28? Now, before you answer that, somebody tell me what the median age of a white non-Hispanic is in America. 43 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're in your 20s, you have acute health crisis. You've done something stupid, like stick your finger in the lawnmower. You got to go to the hospital and get it glued back on. When you get in your 40s, it moves from acute to what? Chronic. Which one costs the most? Trust me, chronic. I lost my wife to cancer at 48 years old. Her treatment in the last 6 months of life, $5,000 a week. Just had a very dear friend, 62 years old, die of cancer. His treatment, $17,000 a week. What you hear makes no sense. These are young people, and we are aging in a way that you're going to need all that talent down the road. As you think long-term about educating the population, you're going to need these folks. Now, there's one more piece to this story, and this is for the ladies in the room. Y'all can tell the men, close their ears if you want to, but I think they need to hear this, ladies. There's something in demography, ladies, called completed fertility, okay? I won't give you the big theory today. Come on up to Chapel Hill Business School, pay us $100,000, we'll gladly tell you. Let me give you the pop version of it. Ladies, completed fertility is when you tell your husband, go take out the trash, ain't nothing else happening here. Completed fertility for women occurs between the ages of 40 and 44. There's this precipitous drop in fertility. What's the median age of a non-Hispanic white female in America? 42 years old. Now, every woman below white here is a woman of color. You will note a 6 to 20 year gap in the median age. Do you know what that gap is? That's your fertility gap. We know exactly what's coming down the path. Now, I know there's some of y'all in the room in your 40s tomorrow, I'm going home and fix this tonight. Go ahead. Leave now. You might go home and squeeze out one, but you're not going to do what a 29-year-old can do. It's fundamental biology, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you like it or not, it's coming, okay? And you got to ask yourself the question, if you want to close down the border like some people do and keep everybody out, what you got left? You got left the Bengay crowd. You can't survive, you can't thrive, you can't prosper moving forward. We already see the impact. Look, In 1990, 66% of all births in America were non-Hispanic whites. That dropped to 50% in 2008, and for the first time in history, in 2011, non-Hispanic white births dropped below 50%. And it's unlikely to go the other direction because of the dynamics in aging and the like. We know where the change is going to come. This is so important for us, that Browning thing, because at the same time that immigration is transforming the complexion of society, aging, the graying of America, is transforming the structure. Now, you might ask the question, how do I know if I'm part of the graying of America? There are 4 ways, okay? 4. If you have difficulty seeing the screen, you're part of the graying of America. 2, if you have to go to the restroom twice after just going during this presentation, you're part of the graying of America. And 3, if you fall asleep, you're just an old codger. It ain't my fault. You're part of graying of America. Graying of America is about 3 things. It's about changes in longevity, declining fertility, and it's a group of us who are called boomers who were born between 1946 and 1964. We are living much, much longer today, ladies and gentlemen, than we even predicted. You see how the life expectancy at birth is moving up. Today it's around 78. And we now think living to 100 on a routine basis is well within reach. And there's one school of thought that says the person who will live to 130 has already been born. Now, how can that be? Well, we're taking better care of ourselves, eating better, exercising, all the medical advances that we have. And now we've got some of the leading people in the country we got this scientist who's developed called regenerative medicine, regenerated a bladder. So your bladder wear out, we'll sell you another one. We're working on every body part now. And Google just launched a company to prolong life, to eliminate death by prolonging life. We're talking about our actuarial tables, ladies and gentlemen, for Social Security and all the other stuff. It doesn't work because we expected y'all to die what? Much sooner. But y'all don't die, you multiply. So we're talking about a profound change in the population, on the other hand, of aging. And part of the reason that we're aging is because of those lower fertility rates. In a statistical sense, ladies and gentlemen, what you have to understand is that if you are a couple, to replace yourself, you need to have 2.1 kids to replace yourself, statistically. Now, don't ask me about the 0.1, you just got to be rocking and rolling, okay? If you need 2.1 kids to replace yourself, ladies and gentlemen, who's replacing themselves in America? You got one group. You build a wall around the country and keep people out, what you got left? Sooner or later, you'll figure out you can't pay your bills. You cannot pay your bills. It's not a statistical aberration. This is not just limited to the United States. Why is this going on? Well, this room is a powerful statement. Look at the number of women in this room. Educated, career-oriented and the like. What happens to the age at marriage when women become more focused on education and career? Goes up. What happens to the age at first childbirth? Goes up. And some people just say, I ain't doing it at all. And so what happens? The age of your population continues to increase in the process. And so non-Hispanic whites and all other groups have had a total fertility rate of 1.9 or lower for 2 decades. Now, I don't know how you get 0.9 of a kid. I taught a few of them in the system, but it takes 2.1 kids to replace yourself. You gotta understand that these things are connected, and I'm not just talking about it from the standpoint of, no, this is a competitiveness issue for us, ladies and gentlemen. We're not gonna win the global war on brawn, we're gonna win it on what? Brains and talent. So this is not trivial. And then there's a group of us who were born between 1946 and 1964. Let me see a show of hands. 1946 to some of y'all lying, but it's all right. 1946, 1964. Those of us who were born between 1946 and 1964 are part of the post-World War II hormonal rush in America. Our fathers went off to World War II. They came back home and they got busy. They got busy to the tune of producing 81 million of us. We're known as the boomer generation. On January 1st of 2011, the first baby boomer born in America turned 65 and became eligible for what? Everything. Every day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year for the next 20 years, we boomers will be turning 65 to the tune of 8,000 per day. Every day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year for the next 20 years. That's called the silver tsunami. And it will have a profound impact on education in our system. Because everybody that raised their hand in this room, sooner or later, are going to be doing what? Exiting the labor market. It's called a succession problem. I did the numbers several years ago, so this is not right now. But when I did them several years ago, at Carolina, 66% of our faculty were aging baby boomers. In the UNC system, it was 77%. How do you replace 66% of your workforce? How do you replace 77% of your workforce? Look at the data. 19 million people increased in that growth rate of 32%. You will note that the second most rapidly growing population is the 65 plus population here, that because we're living longer, but we got a slight problem. What happened to the 25 to 44-year-old population? It's a big group, but what happened to it? It's declining. What we have missed is that some of the debilitating diseases that beset boomers and pre-boomers later in life are now besetting Gen X and Gen Y earlier in life, leading to the early onset of death and disability. If this population is declining, you got a slight problem. Because these people are living longer, and when people tell you that Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, do you know what that means? It means somebody else is spending your money. In order for you to get anything out of the system, what needs to be happening here? Somebody needs to be paying in, this needs to be growing, and they need to be doing what? Working. Ladies and gentlemen, 55% of millennials are either unemployed or underemployed. We call them boomerang crumb snatchers. Because what have they done? They've gone to college, graduated, and just yesterday on NPR, a third of them are back where? Home. Not buying houses, not buying cars, not working. You can't sustain yourself as a society and a community with those kind of numbers. So understand that this is not a trivial kind of matter as you think about your strategic plan and the whole discussion about what do we put in the toolkit moving forward to thrive and prosper in an economy where the new normal is certain uncertainty. And there's some pretty disturbing things actually with suicide rates among non-Hispanic whites and the like, where it's so bad now that it's threatening the life expectancy at birth for non-Hispanic whites. And it's not trivial. And so you need to understand as you think about these things, the connection between Browning and Gray. And that's how often 8,000 per day, 65. But we are fortunate here in our state, when you look at it compared to the nation, look at, if you look at the 25 to 44-year-old population declining for the nation as a whole, we actually grew, and our under 25 population grew more rapidly than the nation, and so did our total population at all ages, but so did the aging population. Why is this the case? Immigration. You take those young people out, you got a problem. You got a problem. Can't pay your bills. And we're also a retirement destination. So we're blessed in a sense, but the challenge is, how do you make sure that you leverage this competitive advantage in the marketplace for gain and advancement for our state in the global marketplace? But there is one kind of challenge that I think you need to be mindful of as you think strategically about our higher education system and our nation and our state in the global marketplace. And it's what I call the triple whammy of geographic disadvantage. At the intersection of this browning of America on the one hand and graying of America on the other hand is this pernicious development that's going to challenge us. Let me develop it for you. I'm beginning to develop a racial typology of U.S. counties. These red counties here are racial generation gap counties. And these counties, the adult voting age population is made up of predominantly white, aging, empty nesters. But the school age population is predominantly minority. What kind of support for public education you think you get there? That's the ain't got no dog in the K-12 education fight. My kids are out of school. I'm most concerned about what? Crime, safety, and retirement amenities. And they vote self-interest, okay? These are majority-minority counties, the yellow, gold, whatever it is. The adult voting age population predominantly non-white, school age population is predominantly non-white. Lots of interest in public education. What's missing? They're all low wealth counties, not enough money there. Okay? The rest of the counties, the gray, are majority counties. The adult voting age population predominantly white, school age population predominantly white. Lots of interest and lots of support for public education. But in those counties, about 1/5 of the kids who attend school there are kids of color. But if you peer beneath the veneer and ask where are those kids in school, they're either in one or two positions. They're either attending racially isolated schools within those districts, or in the good schools, they're highly underrepresented in the college prep tracks, AP, honors, IB, and the like. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the new majority of kids coming down the pike are between a rock and a hard place through no fault of their own in the public education system. That's whammy number one. Whammy number two is at the neighborhood level. These neighborhoods in red are predominantly white. 60% or more of the population is non-Hispanic white in those neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are predominantly non-white. 60% or more of the population is non-white. And in the yellow neighborhoods, those neighborhoods are transitional. They're transitioning from white to non-white. We call that hyper-segregation, separate and unequal, and it probably rivals the segregation that existed the year that I was born in 1954 with Brown versus the Board of Education. That's whammy number two. Whammy number three is poverty at the neighborhood level. Those neighborhoods right there are extreme poverty areas where 40% or more of the kids in those neighborhoods are growing up, kids are growing up in households with incomes below the poverty level. Those yellow ones, orange ones, are high poverty. 25 to 39% of the kids are growing up in households with incomes below the poverty level. We combine those two and we call that concentrated poverty. And the yellow ones, the poverty rates below 25%, we call that concentrated affluence. When I talk about the triple whammy of geographic disadvantage, I'm talking about the kid that walks in the door, some combination of those things today that they have. And how many kids are we talking about? All three of those things, about 9.8 million kids, 93% of them are non-white. If you got two of them, say segregation, concentrated poverty, it's about 12 million kids, 81% non-white. If you got one of those things, it's about 20 million kids, that's 31% non-white. And if you got none of that, life is good for you, 32 million kids, but only 24% of them are non-white. In other words, we have a whole generation of kids there that don't even have a shot. Don't even have a shot. Those are food deserts. Right there. I was blown away. Some of you know we have our own school in Durham, North Carolina. And I was over there one day, and I made the mistake of asking 3 little girls what did they have for dinner the night before. And one little girl looked at me and said, "Last night was not my turn to eat." She said, "In our household, we rotate who gets to eat dinner, and I get to eat every 3rd night." Now, I'm not talking about Bangladesh. I'm not talking about Bangkok. I'm talking about 6 miles from here in Durham, that if you look at every ranking, Durham is all that and a bag of chips plus dip, but there's a kid who gets to eat every 3rd night. And we think we're going to be competitive in the global marketplace where a kid gets to eat every third night. That's the new majority, folk, that you got to deal with. And those are suspension rates in our public schools for black kids. 3 million kids suspended a year, and 250,000 of them referred to the police for misdemeanor charges as early as the first grade. Used to be third grade, but Apex took the cake not long ago. A little kid in the first grade got referred to the police for threatening his teachers with a pair of scissors. Now, I've been out of school a long time, but I remember them scissors from the first grade. They wouldn't even cut the construction paper. And now what kind of school environment do we have where a kid gets referred to the police for a misdemeanor charge in the first grade? And I just read one yesterday where in Detroit, a kid brought a Swiss knife to school to sharpen his pencil because the pencil sharpener in the school was broken. And he gets suspended for 180 days. And that stuff follows you. Who then is going to give a scholarship to a kid with a record? Those are black kids. Those are the Latino kids with the suspension stuff. I mean, it's just, I mean, we got to fix that problem. Let me do this for North Carolina so you all see where we are in our state. I'm just going to do it quickly. So we're boom. I mean, you know, everybody, we've been growing like crazy. We're growing 18.5%, with the nation growing 9.5% first decade, new millennium, 1.5 million people coming to our state when the South's growing only at 14%. What's been driving our growth over time? Immigration. Look at that. Look at that takeoff. About 8% of our population is foreign born today. You look at that track. And the two things, Hispanics and immigrants, was transforming our society over that time. And the age thing, look at it. Median age in North Carolina, 39 for women, 54 live births for all women. The median age for white women is 44, 47 live births for 1,000 women. If you go down to the Hispanics, we're even younger, 24 years old, and 84 live births per 1,000 women. We better be happy that we got every one of those kids, because down the road, that's going to be the population that does what? Propels. That's right. They're going to pay the bills. You got to understand the connection between browning on the one hand and graying on the other hand as you think about these issues. What's happened to us since 2010? Well, in this country, we've added another 12 million people to our population, and we've added in North Carolina close to another 500,000 people to our population since 2010. So 2010, 2015 in the state. 67% of that growth is non-white, 23% of it is Hispanic. That whole trend continues after the first decade. Of that 500,000 people we've added to our population since 2010, between 2010 and 2015, about 47% of that population concentrated in two counties, Wake and Mecklenburg. Okay? Another 35 to 40% are in those gold counties, and the balance of it in those yellow counties. All of the other counties, they are lost population. Okay? We have half of the counties in North Carolina, deaths exceed births, and out-migration exceeds in-migration. When your deaths exceed births and more people leave than come, you are a dying county. You're only as strong as your weakest link, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't kids coming from those counties that need education, but what's the financial base for that education in those places? It doesn't exist. It's not there. What's happened? You see the impact of these shifts that I'm talking about in our school system. Since 1990, we've added another 400,000 to the public school system, but there's been a fundamental shift in composition. A huge, sharp decline in white kids, a decline in African American kids, but that decline has been offset by Hispanic and other kids, Asian and other groups of kids in the school system. So we see this fundamental shift in the school system, but we lost 23,000 black kids, and the public school system lost 62,000 white kids. Now, a lot of white kids going to private schools and homeschooling and all of that. I'm still at a conundrum here. I think I know where they are, but other institutions. Because when you get long-term suspended, and I know where they are, but you see that change, net change of 175,000, but we gained a what? 183,000 Latino kids. You know, you're gonna need that. That's next generation talent. And what stunned me when I looked at the data, because we have a problem with males that I'll get to in just a second, but look at who's the decline. These are males here. We lost 29,000 black males, but we lost 33,000 black females in the system, and we lost 18,000 white males and 21,000 white females in the system. You know, we got some challenges here. For the first time in history, white kids in the public school system in North Carolina is no longer the numerical majority, dropped below 50%. And so think about your constitutional obligation to the young people of the state of North Carolina. It's changing. It's changing dramatically. So that typology, these are our racial generation gap counties in North Carolina. Adult population predominantly white, school-age population predominantly minority. These are our majority-minority counties. Both groups are predominantly non-white. And those are the majority counties in North Carolina. You see the east of I-95 effect here and all of that. Those are the State Department of Public Education districts there. That's predominantly white neighborhoods, 60% or more white. Those are predominantly minority neighborhoods, 60% or more non-white, and those yellow ones are experiencing transition from white to black or non-white. Same thing, I've just superimposed on segregation. Those are high poverty, extreme poverty neighborhoods. Those are high poverty neighborhoods, and the yellow is extreme is low poverty or areas of concentrated affluence in our state. And so our triple whammy in the state, it's a complex pattern, but you got to understand that the dynamic, and when you look at it at the neighborhood level and where kids are coming from and the challenge that they have, it's pretty tremendous. And I just pulled the data for you. You can look at this on your own, but these are suspension rates per 100 students across these different community areas. So in the majority neighborhoods, about 15 of every 100 students are suspended, but the range in the schools go from 2.1 to 62 kids out of 100 suspended every year. And if you go down here, it's from 11 per 100 to 76 per 100 suspended. You can't sustain yourself with those numbers. And those are the ones of reportable crimes. That's per 1,000 students, not 100 students. But you can see, you know, the things that kids are getting reported to the police for. And what stunned me when I did some of this work is when I looked at who was taking end of course tests, there's a huge sex ratio imbalance in test taking. Boys are not even in the room. Look at it. That's who's taking the test. Blue line, boys, males. Red line, females, across a set of school districts. Not even taking tests. Now, some of them are probably suspended, expelled, or whatever, but there's one school of thought that says that there's some school administrators who tell their boys, don't come to school the day of the test because I can't have you doing what? Screwing up my end of grade scores. And what do you get out of all of that? This is a school district that will remain nameless but in the state, but they produce 6,000 graduates every year. And on average, about 1,500 of those graduates go to the local community college. The blue line is the percentage of those kids that enter college ready. They're ready to take college courses, about 25%. The red line are the percentage of kids who need one remedial course, and the green line are the percentage of kids who need 2 or more remedial courses, okay? 71% of these kids couldn't pass developmental level math 1, add and subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Only 7% of the 71% ever made it to the starting line of college math. They spent all their Pell Grant money trying to get there, or they got frustrated and did what? Dropped out. Now, these are the graduates. I'm not talking about the ones who dropped out well before. You can moralize about this, you can do anything, but what I would invite you to think about is that this is a competitiveness issue for us moving forward. We cannot leave this many kids behind. It's incumbent upon us to think about how do you fix this problem. What it means, though, is that there's a huge sex ratio imbalance in higher education. For the past decade, the sex composition of higher education has been 60% female, 40% male. Now, I assure you, at birth, the sex ratio is not what? 60-40. Here's the UNC system. 43% male. The predominantly white institutions, about 45% male. Minority serving institutions, 36% male. And the HBUs, 36%. Community colleges, about 44% male. In 2010, in the United States, we granted 572,000 more degrees to women than we did men in higher education. Where are the men? Where are the boys? See, the significance of this, ladies and gentlemen, extends beyond higher education, because when you have that kind of sex ratio imbalance, you can't have stable families, you can't have stable communities and the like, because ladies, y'all look good, you're educated, making money, but if you ain't hitched, forget about it. Not enough eligible, marriageable males to go around. This is not a trivial matter for us. And if we're serious about being on top of our competitive edge, you gotta figure. We had one school a couple years ago that was 80-20. 80% female, 20% male. I want you to hear from, we've been doing some work on kids who come from these concentrated poverty environments, first generation kids and the like. I want you to hear some of their voices about both their non-academic and academic challenges. This is some work we're doing at Carolina, and we've done some work at community college on this. Now, let me just, before I present all this, let me just say that all of these kids made it through the system, but I got to talk about what it took for them to make it through the system, but I want you to understand the challenges that they faced. This is one kid, student number 1, said, I feel like I've been kind of on a roller coaster. I feel like there's always something going on back home. And part of me getting away from that was having to cut off my parents. Not like an I'm going to talk to you, not going to talk to you anymore kind of way. But for the first couple of years, my mom would call me needing money and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, look, I know I get this refund check, but it's not for you, it's for me. I'm sorry. I need the money for my own purposes. You can't be calling me for money anymore. I think me doing that really took a lot of stress and made it easier for me to focus on what was happening here instead of worrying about what was happening back home. Got to understand, the more diverse we become, cultural forces begin to shape who you are and what kinds of things that matter. You know, in my own family, you know, I had 8 family members between the ages of 84 and 97. In my family, I am Social Security. I understand that. So what does that mean? When my colleagues are going to South Beach and flying here and there and buying horses and horse farms, I'm doing what? Taking care of them. Understand that you can moralize about this, but it's reality. And as we become more diverse, these kinds of issues are things that kids respond to. Here's another one. I had a lot of issues at home, so it's really stressful for me because my parents are kind of in between homes right now. So it's not like I just got home and be like, oh, I'm just gonna go home and chill with my parents for a while. I haven't even been able to go home for the summer. I have to stay here and pay summer school and all that stuff. I mean, for me, it's been more of a hindrance than anything. Student number 4. My first year here was really hard because my mom would literally call me almost every other day, either complaining about my little cousin who has behavioral issues or complaining about money or other people in the family. It really started to stress me out my freshman year. I wouldn't even study. I would be so stressed out. I would go home and just go to bed because I didn't want to hear any of that. I just wanted to come here and have a good time, forget about all of that. Over the years, I talked to my mom and explained to her, it's not that I don't care, but I have problems of my own, maybe not as serious as yours, but I have to deal with those too. I'm here to support you, but at the same time, I'm here for a purpose, and that she was kind of pulling me back. I feel like just being open with her helped, and now every once in a while something will happen, but for the most part, she's just been encouraging. She wants me to finish because she didn't finish, so now it's just like, you're almost there, a year left, you got this. And what I have to tell you about this is that the key to her getting to that place was having at Carolina a mental wellness program in place that helped kids navigate the kinds of things when they're first generation and never know where that stuff comes from. Without that, so as you think about re-engineering education and what packages to go there, everybody's talking about how do we diversify. Diversity only gets you in the door. How do you build an accommodation system for the different population? That's important. Let's look at academic challenges for students. Most of my high school AP courses were actually offered online. We didn't really have the capacity or teaching ability to offer them at my school. Oh, I forgot to add that I took AP US and War History. The professor I had would go to sleep in class, but the science classes were okay, but I don't think they were good like preparing me for college science classes. Another student, we had AP classes at my high school, but the teachers were garbage, so that didn't really help me. I didn't pass not one of my AP tests, but I passed all classes with A's and B's, but I didn't do well on the tests. Third student, I was able to build, this is a community college transfer student, I was able to build relationships with professors and advisors at my community college, so it was helpful in that part of the transition. But academic-wise, I don't think I was prepared for Carolina. I felt like it was almost like high school 2.0. It was small classes and everything, but looking back, I think professors just babied and fed me the workload, and I think it's because maybe the mindset was like, oh, you at least made it this far. It was kind of weird. There were some great professors, and I did sometimes feel like I was engaging in learning the material, but nothing compared to this. My first semester here was a very awakening in that department. Think about it as you think about transfer issues and the like. And this one, another student said, my story is similar to yours. To give you a sense how easy my community college experience was, I took 24 hours worth of credits, which is ridiculous. It's unheard of here at least. And I worked 40 hours a week and still got 8 hours of sleep at night. I mean, that's how incredibly easy my college was, because they handed you a study guide. It literally had everything on the test on it, and I have a really good memory. Just had to read it twice before bed and the next day face the exam. But the part I will say that they did help me was they did allow me to really build my resume for college. I mean, I was a student body vice president there. I was involved in a lot of clubs, did a lot of volunteering, so that part helped me on character building aspect of it. But when it comes to the challenge that this place, Carolina, gives you, they did absolutely very little for me. And the last one. My first semester here was like enlightenment for me. I got here, was really naive, and honestly, my academic advisor led me down a terrible path, because I came here as a chemistry major, and I went to my academic advisor, and I was like, is it okay if I take physics, chemistry, and biology all in one semester? It was like, yeah, sure, you got it, you got it. That semester, I was up all night. I began to question, do I even belong here? I mean, the amount of studying I was doing, the lack of results, I really started questioning my ability as a student. I definitely knew at that point I should listen to my dad, who was screaming, saying, no, don't take 3 science courses in one semester. We laugh at it now, but if you are a first generation student from one of these rural counties, you come in and somebody tell you that it's okay, what are you going to do? You know? So what do we got to do moving forward? I believe firmly that if we in higher education don't become more actively engaged in K-12 education for reasons of enlightened self-interest, we're going to be in trouble. Anybody in business would say, you got to know your customer. And you want them to be prepared to take advantage of the great education that we have to offer, but it's going to require more than just thinking about recruitment. We have to be able to leverage the expertise that exists in our institutions to develop evidence-based strategies and to beta test innovations aimed at improving college readiness for an increasingly diverse pool of public school students. I firmly believe we need an AHEC type system for K-12 education reform. Our AHEC system works wonderfully for health education. We need the same thing, I think, for K-12 education. And burying our heads in the sand and say, we're not going to look in a different direction when it comes to this, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because those are the people who have to be the next generation to propel our state and nation. I think we got to make college success courses a mandatory requirement for both high school graduation and college admissions. When you're a first generation college student, where are you going to get it from if we don't institutionalize it in a way that makes it successful? When you do those courses, they really work. And I firmly believe that we need to expand the Carolina Covenant model of access, accommodation, and affordability throughout the system. Because the kids that I just showed you from the Covenant model, but they all graduated. But what it was all of the stuff in the toolbox here that made that possible for them to succeed. And I mentioned it earlier, succession planning for an impending wave of faculty and staff retirements. I always say, you can't replace me for what you pay me. And what I mean by that is that when other universities come after our faculty, they come with some pretty serious packages. And whether or not we can compete, I think you don't want to get into that game. I think we want to be forward thinking about how we retain talent, but also think about recruiting the next generation of talent, because it won't look like us. And the students that we're serving won't look like the ones that we're serving now. So this is not a trivial thing. Remember what I said, 66% and 77%. I don't know what the numbers are now, pretty easy to do, but I would encourage you to think about that. But this is a huge, huge thing, because we're only as good as who we put in front of the students to be able to teach. And if there's this huge wave of people who are retiring now, see, there's one thing about old man and old woman time, sooner or later, you have to go. And there's just a bunch of us that's about time to go. And so you got to think about this thing. And I think one of the biggest things for us in terms of mobilizing support, how do we get aging empty nesters to understand that they do have a dog in the K-12 education fight? That is called the future competitiveness of our nation. And I've been thinking really hard about how do I explain it to them. And this is what I've come up with, and I've done this in a couple of presentations. I say to aging empty nesters, says, you know, sooner or later you're going to age to the level where you need somebody to take care of you. You do want them to be able to count your pills. Okay? I just showed you that we have a whole generation that can't what? Count your pills. Now you laugh about that, but if you're in that situation, or if you've ever had an elderly loved one that you're taking care of, you want the person who's taking care of them to be what? Competent. Mm-hmm. It's not the case. I could go on. I got examples of what we're doing at Carolina on this. I don't know if you want me to do it or not, but I'm happy. Yeah. Go to question. Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Other than ruining my morning, that was a lot to think about. Have any questions? Looking around, and everybody looked, the expressions were reflected what we're hearing from you. David?
Not really a question, just a comment, because it goes to something I brought up with Andrew, is that, you know, our task is not just what happens when they walk in the door here.
Right.
It's before that, because if we don't start addressing that, we're not going to get students that are capable of walking in here. And we've got to be, I know we don't need any more to take on because we got enough to fill many days here. But we're really going to have to get serious about, okay, how do we use this great university system to impact more strongly what's going on in K-12? And I say that as the husband of a public school, elementary school teacher, and the son of an elementary public school teacher. So we've got to do that. Got to.
No, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Joan?
I think one of the most shocking things that you talked about today was the discrepancy between male to female participation in the education system. Would you elaborate a little bit more about what you think can be done about that? Because that's really critical.
Yeah. So it starts early. There's something called the 4th grade failure syndrome for boys of color. You can set your clock by it. All boys come to school ready to learn, excited about learning and the like. They get to about the 4th grade, they begin to disengage, and it's a precipitous drop till they get to about the 9th grade when they can drop out. And so we have to focus laser-like on K-3 education, to make sure that every kid gets that fantastic start. And then we have to have sustained engagement throughout the life course, from 3 to high school graduation on to college. So you got to define a life course perspective. And I don't have time to develop it, but one of the best things that we can do as we think about these issues is, in the work we do, we say deficit models are out, successful pathways are in. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the neighborhoods and communities that we're talking about, not every kid from those neighborhoods end up a failure. Some of them succeed against the odds. And so the crucial question becomes, what distinguishes success from failure? And so what we've been doing is focusing on those success matrix and say, can we scale those things so that more boys are successful, and increasingly more girls, because we got to get to the bottom of all of that kind of stuff. So I think the big thing is, how do we transform teacher preparation to ensure that every teacher has the tools in her toolkit, in his toolkit, to work with the diverse constituencies that are entering our school systems today. Cultural competency training and the like. We've developed a program that's in this slide deck. You can see it. We have a whole thing, bridgestosuccess.org, that you will see all of this stuff. We have a idea lab with the best and brightest minds in the UNC system working on these issues, and we think we have some innovative things that are going to improve these things. One that I'll mention really quickly, when the NCAA changed the eligibility rules to play Division I level sports, what we figured out was that you need to know by middle school now what it takes to play Division I level sports. The days of magically passing something in your senior year to qualify are over. And so the other thing that we figured out was, a lot of middle school and high school athletic coaches are either in one or two situations. One, they either have never finished college, or secondly, they're contract coaches. They have nothing to do with the academic side of education. They're just paid to what? Coach. Now, these men and women have an indelible impact on people. So we've designed a coaches initiative to move them from just the X and O's on the field to become youth development people. And we just beta tested it in Durham. I thought we'd have major pushback from the athletic coaches, but they ate this thing up. And so now we're in conversations with the Atlanta Hawks about doing it for all basketball coaches in the entire Atlanta metropolitan region, because even pro sports are worried about the quality of the kid that's coming out. It's no longer just about how high I can jump, how hard I can hit. You got to have some other things, because it's all about big data analytics and everything else and all of this stuff. And so there are lots of things, but I think focusing on a success paradigm as opposed to focusing on deficits is really important.
Hannah?
Yeah, would you talk a little bit about your idea for an AHEC type system for K through 12?
I think these innovation, so my thing is, I think we need these innovation labs in all of these districts. Here, can I go back? Yeah. These are the state public ed districts. I think we need these innovation labs that focus on new ideas and innovations for how you educate poor children or children in general. I think they become hubs for professional development for teachers. This is where we usually do a lot of professional development for teachers. Envision a teacher up here coming over here for a day of training and then gotta go back. If you ever driven up there, I pay somebody to go for me, it's just, it's an impossible system, and Andrew showed you that the online stuff ain't working very well, so we need a physical presence in all these places with the evidence-based best practices, just like the AHEC system, if we're gonna improve the quality of the product that's walking into the schools that we all care about deeply and want to make sure that every kid has an equal opportunity for success in the educational environment. So that's the kind of model that I was thinking about. And we have some ideas about what goes into those innovation labs and people who are working on those kinds of problems.
Great. Jim, Harry, you.
Yeah, I got a question. Have you guys taken a look at or analyzed the ability for the Browning part of what you're talking about, so ability to pay for an education that's obviously spiraling out of control? So if you take a look now at the 1.2 trillion that Andrew talked about, which I think is the number that we're all sobered by, and what has been an escalating cost of higher education, right? And you can put anything you want to put on why it's gone up so much. A lot of arguments on it, right? But has anybody taken a look at what is, when you're talking about taking the border down, which I appreciate your opinion on that, what their ability to be able to save and do to be able to take this new wave that's going to come into the higher education, what's their propensity to be able to pay, and how that's going to impact financial aid?
Oh, I think they have challenge with the ability to pay, but what I would say is that if we figure out how to invest in K-12 education, they will all get scholarships because they are the most motivated kids in the world. They're first generation. Not everybody immigrates. They are risk takers by definition. All we have to do is unleash the talent. They will be competitive in the marketplace for scholarships and the like. We will have difficulty retaining them.
Thank you, Jim. I think we've reached the time limit for us, but I really appreciate your being here. It's in my opinion, we've had a great session this morning, and I think I hope we'll have many more like this in the future. Lunch is gonna. Lunch is going to be served, and then we will start into our committee schedule. Margaret, do you have anything you'd like to say before we do? Margaret says we can go get those BLTs right now. Let's go. Okay, thank you all.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.